Blood-red sunlight soaked the empire's sprawling palaces as dusk crept in. Deep inside the royal throne room, the messenger finally delivered the news. Flawless work. Claudina just locked down the northern frontier. Lounging on his gold-plated throne, the monarch tossed out the compliment with a calculated, chilling smirk. But that hollow praise was just a setup. His piercing eyes locked onto the young commander. "Remind me, what is your exact age these days?" The answer hit the air with unwavering loyalty. 24, Your Highness." Slumping back into his velvet cushions, a sinister satisfaction flashed across the ruler's face. "Prime age to tie the knot. Therefore, I am gifting you a bride straight from my own royal bloodline." Instantly, the entire courtroom erupted into absolute chaos. Frantic whispers bounced off the towering marble columns. "A royal princess, the secret one. Wait, did not everyone assume she died years ago?" Almost like on cue, the massive oak doors groaned open to silence the rumors. A fragile girl stepped out of the shadows. Trembling and completely barefoot, she wore nothing but a frayed white slip. Gorgeous blonde waves tumbled down her shoulders in an absolute mess, but those striking sapphire eyes darted around in pure, unfiltered terror. People literally gasped out loud. The nobles lost their minds. "Oh my god, that is Princess Misa." She actually survived. Her legs visibly shook, totally crumbling under the intense pressure of 100 burning stairs. Looming way up high on his pedestal, her brother casually waved his hand. "Misa, get over here!" She stumbled toward the steps, desperately gripping her own chest. She was hyperventilating. Raw panic totally hijacked her nervous system and her legs gave out, hitting the freezing stone floor with a tiny whimper. Her golden locks pooled everywhere like a halo. The entire room went dead silent. Wait, is she physically even capable of standing? Without missing a single beat, Eric broke from the crowd and dropped to one knee right beside her. With absolute gentleness, he scooped up her fragile hand, brushing his lips against her knuckles to lock in his public pledge. "Serving you is my greatest privilege, Your Highness." But Misa violently snatched her fingers back. Her chest heaved as her heart threatened to explode. Those huge, terrified blue eyes shook wildly. You could see the sheer trauma and confusion spiraling in her gaze. Misa, the tyrant's icy roar, absolutely shattered the quiet bouncing off the walls. "You do not greet your future husband like a stray dog. Get up here!" He yanked his sibling into his side, gripping her way too tight, treating her like she was some rare trading card rather than a human being. "She is my absolute favorite person in the world, yet her etiquette is garbage. Do it now. Apologize right now." The poor girl opened her mouth, suffocating on her own panic. Her broken words spilled out in microscopic shattered whispers. Eric's jaw instantly clenched. He stayed completely mute, but his sharp eyes tracked every single toxic microaggression. He was silently downloading the entire messed-up dynamic playing out on that stage. Twilight swallowed the sky while the heavy wooden carriage chewed up the rocky dirt trail. The vibe inside was incredibly heavy. The Duke and his wife refused to speak a single word, their tension cutting deeper than a broadsword. They just survived a brutal, dragged-out campaign, yet victory flags were waving everywhere, and the whole country was basically throwing a massive party. The legendary 9 Knights of Claudina, built like literal tanks, had completely dominated the front lines, practically handing the Empire its golden age on a silver platter. But while the commoners were busy hyping up Claudina's insane heroics, the insecure dude sitting on the throne was actually raging behind closed doors. Massive popularity terrified him. Seeing one singular family rack up that much clout made his fancy headpiece feel incredibly heavy. So, plotting like an absolute snake, he cooked up a literal prison sentence and wrapped it in a pretty bow. A forced wedding. Cut to that evening at the estate where things got totally explosive. Hands slammed against the mahogany. "Are you kidding me? We bled for this country and this is our payout. Some broken royal girl is our grand reward." Yet right in the middle of that screaming match, one chill, absolutely unbothered voice sliced through the noise. "Dodging a direct royal order is a death sentence." Eric Claudina, the youthful master of the house, leveled his gaze at the room. "This ceremony is happening, period." He kept going, a dark intensity flashing in his pupils. "It does not matter how toxic this match is." Casually picking up his steak knife, he carved into his dinner. Showing the exact same deadly focus he used to drop enemies on the front lines, his mindset was locked in. In his world, emotional baggage took a backseat to pure survival. Sitting way down at the opposite edge, his cousin Emberic finally snapped, his vocal cords strained to the max. "Hold up, what about the arranged marriage with the Crispin household?" But everyone already knew the depressing truth, and another relative instantly fired back. "Why are you even bringing that up?" Trapped by his own obligations, Eric just kept up his untouchable poker face. To him, swapping vows had zero to do with romance. It was just another ruthless political chessboard, and he was forced to play. Weeks flashed by in a dizzying blur, the anxiety dialing up to an 11. Until the highly anticipated morning finally hit. The entire capital city practically vibrated sidewalks, completely jammed with nosy locals and wild rumors. Crowds swarmed the avenues, absolutely desperate to catch a glimpse of the Phantom Royal marrying Cladina's ultimate most valuable player. Rolling up in his luxury coach, the groom sat perfectly straight in his high-end formal wear, looking totally composed, but internally analyzing everything. Decked out in crisp white and pure gold trim, he served ultimate storybook royalty vibes. Exiting the ride, his heavy leather boots echoed across the grand chapel tiles with terrifying confidence. Suddenly, the colossal cathedral doors groaned apart. You could hear a pin drop. Every single head whipped around to witness the bride's final reveal. Rocking a heavily layered, intricate lace gown, the princess practically floated into the aisle. She gave off this unreal, otherworldly aura, looking literally carved from pale moonlight. But the awe instantly dissolved into nasty whispering. "Bro, is she okay? She looks like she is totally wasted right now. She cannot even walk in a straight line." The massive holy sanctuary suddenly muted as the official ceremony kicked off. Only the head priest's booming words filled the tense air. Those binding words dropped like an absolute anvil. Supposed to be a sacred blessing, right now. It felt more like heavy iron chains locking their destinies together. "You may now kiss the bride." Eric tilted his head, his gloved fingers softly framing Misa's violently shaking jaw. The kiss connected. A total theatrical performance meant to trick everyone watching. The massive cathedral erupted into deafening cheers, totally drowning out the absolute nightmare screaming behind Misa's eyes. Fast forward to nightfall. The royal estate glowed beneath a starry sky, while servants hid a deep bow. "Tread lightly with Her Highness. We'll swing back through tomorrow at dawn to grab the proof. Showing you actually handled your husbandly duties, my lord." "Got it." Eric's icy tone sliced right through the tension. Those massive wooden doors groaned open. He took slow, calculated strides inside. And there she was. Misa lay totally incapacitated, wrists lashed together, shivering uncontrollably. They'd pumped her so full of sedatives it could literally knock out a literal warhorse. Eric's piercing gaze swept the room, catching every messed-up detail. Their breathing, the ghostly white complexion, the brutal binds. He gritted his teeth. Bro even captured enemy soldiers. Get treated with way more respect than this. He clocked the situation immediately. This wasn't some random maid's petty bullying. Only the actual king could greenlight something this savage. Closing the distance, he squatted next to her. She was literally freezing, her body temperature dropping to a terrifying degree. He snapped her restraints off, rubbing her skin to force the circulation back, but it wasn't doing the trick. Panic started creeping in. He only had one card left to play. "Princess," he whispered, his voice dropping an octave as he mentally prepped for the move. "I'm gonna share my body heat. Don't freak out." He slid right under the heavy covers, tucking her fragile figure tight against his chest, then acting like this was some formal meet and greet. He dropped his lore with deadpan seriousness. "I'm Eric, heir to the Claudine house, 24 years old, no brothers. Used to have a little sister, but I lost her to an accident way back." His tone instantly darkened. "Been basically living in the trenches ever since. Yet somehow Her Royal Highness is the one tying the knot with me today." He stared down at her ghostly, trapped by a messed-up destiny and heavy meds. A flash of hesitation crossed his face. Is she even processing a word I'm saying? Still, he had to give her the reality check. "Frontier winters are absolutely ruthless," he mumbled. He wrapped his hands around her freezing fingers. "Frostbite always attacks the extremities first. Getting that blood pumping again is literal life or death right now." Right on cue, the princess gave a tiny twitch. A tiny whimper leaving her mouth, and a flush of pink finally hit her cheeks. A massive wave of relief hit him. Thank God. She's stabilizing, the colors coming back, but a massive roadblock still loomed. He needed that first night evidence. Without it, the royal watchdogs would definitely start barking. He hopped up, sweeping the room for a loophole. Bingo. His gaze locked onto some fragile glassware. A master plan clicked into place. He let out a heavy sigh, fully feeling the burden of his rank. Cut to morning. Rocking a casual fit, he strolled out the door casually, holding the red-stained fabric, the ultimate alibi for their fake consummation. With zero hesitation and total boss energy, he tossed it to the squad of waiting servants. "Here's your holy proof," he deadpanned. The maids immediately bowed, swearing to sprint it straight to the king. But right as they moved to barge in and prep the princess, Eric threw his arm out. "Hold up. Her Highness is still out cold. Catch her later." The maids shot each other confused looks, but took the hint, loud and clear. "We'll back off." Back inside, Eric slumped against the heavy oak door, blowing out a massive breath of air. Fast forward a bit. Some weird rustling noises grabbed his focus. He whipped around to see his new wife plopped on the floor, blonde hair acting like a messy halo, literally gnawing on the corner of her duvet like a teething puppy. Eric scrunched his eyebrows. Princess, that's not a snack." But she completely ghosted him, just keeping up her bizarre chewing mission. Half laughing, half stressing, he grabbed a fresh roll from the stash. Squatting down, he offered it up. "Guess you're starving. Hold on a sec. Try this instead." The royal blinked her hand, shooting out super cautiously. The second that warm carbs hit her mouth, she devoured it, her eyes lighting up like she hadn't eaten an actual meal in her entire life. Eric broke into a subtle, totally whipped smile. Glad it hits the spot. Time skip. The massive iron estate gates groaned open for their grand return. The gossip traveled at light speed. The young lord is back. But this time, he wasn't rolling solo. He had actual royalty walking right beside him. The entire mansion crew crowded around. Elites and staff were heavily side-eyeing the situation. And beneath all that fake, polite smiling, the patriarch of the family was straight up white-knuckling his fists behind his back. Mere seconds later, absolute chaos dropped. Operating on pure, intrusive thoughts, the princess scaled a massive stone gargoyle in the courtyard, sending her handmaids into a literal meltdown. "Your Highness, you're gonna fall! Get down from there!" they shrieked, fully losing their minds. The Margrave's face locked up, but Eric simply marched right into the madness, effortlessly plucking her out of the air like it was absolutely nothing. "Please hand her over to us," a panicked servant pleaded. "You need to chill, young master." "I'm good," he shot back his dominant tone, leaving zero room for debate. "She is officially Claudine Blood as of today. She's my responsibility now, so you all better watch exactly how you treat her." The head butler dipped into a crisp 90-degree bow. "Consider it done. She's in safe hands, sir. Leave everything to us." As dusk painted the estate in shadows, the noble family claimed their seats at the massive banquet table. Slicing through the suffocating silence, Eric turned to the hovering staff. "I'll handle her feeding tonight. Clock out and get some rest." Instantly, side eyes and silent gossip bounced among the maids. A senior attendant stepped up, clearing her throat. "With all due respect, my lord, Her Highness is unpredictable. Dinner time is an absolute nightmare." Ignoring the warning, Eric gently slid a plated delicacy toward the royal. "My lady," he murmured, his voice as smooth as velvet. "Want to give this a try?" She just blankly stared at him. Then, ever so slowly, her lips parted. But just as Eric started to exhale a sigh of relief, bam, she violently hacked the bite right back onto the table. Total chaos dropped on the dining room. Jaws hit the floor, sharp gasps echoed, and the staff started buzzing like a disturbed hornet's nest. The elegant vibe totally wrecked. Reacting on pure instinct, Eric locked down her wrists to keep her from thrashing. "Hey, breathe. Just chill for a second, my lady," he whispered. Just behind the princess's chair, her so-called personal maid sneered, trying to muffle their downright toxic giggles. "Get her cleaned up, now," Eric barked. Wiping the smirks off their faces, the girls shared a look before stepping up with fake robotic loyalty. "Yes, my lord," they chorused, though you could practically hear the eye roll in their voices. Let's hit rewind for a second. Way back in the kingdom of Esquilar, 3 elite bloodlines basically carried the whole nation on their backs. First up, the Solakis family, the political masterminds running the domestic affairs. Then the Crispin clan, heavily armed and locking down the streets to maintain public order. And finally, House Cladenai, the brutal shield, destroying any foreign threats. Together, these big 3 monopolized the nation's political strings and sheer military firepower. To keep the peace, the former monarch of Escalar actually wifed up 3 different queens, one from each powerhouse. The literal firstborn to drop from the Solakis queen was none other than Bermelek II. But this dude turned out to be an absolute menace. Bermelek completely ditched his royal homework and started ruthlessly stomping on his own people, stamping it as national security. He literally went scorched earth on his own flesh and blood, wiping out House Solakis. And because his bloodlust knew zero bounds, he set his crosshairs on the remaining 2 families. Pushed totally to the breaking point, the surviving clans schemed a massive team-up. Their master plan A, strategic arranged marriage between their top heirs, to trigger a full-blown rebellion the second the current war wrapped. Spoiler alert, things went south real quick when the Psycho King sniffed out the treason and crashed the party. "Word on the street is the kid was perfectly normal," a voice murmured. But watching her people get slaughtered right in front of her, it completely shattered her mind. "Honestly, it breaks my heart," Lady Cladenai sighed, genuine sadness pooling in her eyes. "Are you kidding me? We don't have the luxury to feel sorry for anyone right now," Duke Margrave roared, slamming his meaty fist onto the mahogany. "Just this morning, the board was literally plotting to swap you out for Amberic as the next in line," he spat aggressively, swirling the ruby liquid in his goblet. "And Prince Hagel, is he still dragging his feet?" A disgusted sneer twisted his face. "What an absolute coward. The man is the king's own cousin." Dripping in pure royal DNA, literally the only direct heir left breathing besides the mad tyrant himself. But karma had seriously done Hagal dirty. A brutal accident left him paralyzed in a wheelchair, completely infertile, and basically locked away from the sunlight. Even so, just keeping a pulse made him the most lethal wildcard in this twisted political chess match. Duke Margrave's patience hit rock bottom. He punched the timber violently. "Every single plan is tanking. We are completely stuck." His furious shouting vibrated through the halls long after he rage-quit the room. Lady Margrave leaned in closer. "Listen to me about that girl," she whispered. "Do not go catching feelings or playing savior. Honestly, a man's sympathy is the most useless, fragile thing on this earth," she warned. "Don't give her fake hope. She's suffered enough." Caught completely off guard by his mom's rare soft spot, Eric just swallowed hard and gave a firm nod. Deep into the night, Eric paced down the dim hallway. He walked with heavy, purposeful strides, but his brain was absolutely spiraling. Around the corner, toxic whispers leaked from the maid's room. "Just follow orders, you psycho," one of them hissed. "Is she acting all wild just because they fed her some rich people food?" Another mocked. "Bro, did you see their faces drop at dinner, though?" Their trash talk ran hot until Eric pushed the door open. "Good shift. Pack it up and get out. I'm taking the wheel," he commanded, ice in his veins. He only caught the tail end of their gossip, but the math was mathing. He knew exactly what kind of hell the princess was enduring behind closed doors. The two girls froze, terrified they were busted before speedwalking out of there. "You seem pretty fired up tonight, my lady," Eric offered, closing the gap. He dropped down gently on the edge of her seat. "Look, I have zero clue if you're actually processing this," he confessed, his voice totally unguarded. "But I just want you to feel safe in this house." Slowly, the broken royal tilted her chin up, locking her massive ocean blue eyes onto his. For a split second, a flash of pure sanity hit her pupils. Eric's heart literally skipped a beat. Wait, was she actually getting through the fog? And just like that, she spat directly at him. Reality check? Nope. Her mind was still completely offline. She hadn't processed a single syllable. Eric turned into a statue. Completely shell-shocked, he dragged a sleeve across his cheek. "Hey now, we don't spit on people," he scolded softly like a tired dad talking to a toddler. Blowing out a massive, exhausting breath, he stood up. "Get some sleep," he told her, striking that perfect balance between gentle and bossy. He spun on his heel, heading out to scrub the day off. Left behind in the quiet, the princess didn't make a single sound. Total poker face. When the clock struck late, they finally crashed in the same bed. Outside, a massive storm was tearing the pitch-black sky apart. Jagged lightning flashed instantly, swallowed by bone-rattling thunder. The princess's eyes snapped wide open. Pure dread washed over her gaze, yet she didn't make a peep, paralyzed under the covers. Dead still, she just locked her sight on the dude snoozing soundly next to her. Not a single blink while the weather went absolutely feral outside. Fast forward to breakfast. Eric, playing the ultra-patient guy, tried breaking the ice. "Catch some good sleep last night." He kept his voice super soft. "She looked totally washed out, honestly worse than yesterday. You were chilling before we crashed, but now," he trailed off low-key, analyzing her face. Out of nowhere, she literally grabbed her breakfast barehanded and crushed it right into the plate. The entire dining hall went pin-drop silent, staff standing there totally stunned. Eric, he just let out a heavy breath. Ever since this royal showed up a few days ago, his life had been straight-up chaotic. The vibes in the estate completely flipped the second they tied the knot. It felt like every single person was whispering behind their backs, but nobody actually dropped a word. Lord Claytonay even straight-up ghosted family dinners, which honestly just made Lady Claytonay lose her absolute mind. Even the loyal knights backing their crew were tripping out, totally weirded out by this crazy plot twist. But through all the drama, Eric stayed perfectly solid. Ice in his veins, not letting a single thing faze him. Wrapping up his daily workout, he dropped the question. "Where is my wife right now?" Chilling down in the servant quarters, a staff member stammered out. He stopped dead, scrubbing sweat off his jaw with a rag. Creases formed on his forehead before he marched straight down the hallway. A tiny sliver of light peeked through the cracked door. Inside, the royal was literally curled up in a laundry basket, out cold. Blonde waves spilling all over the fresh linens. The working girls were spilling tea in hushed voices, basically hardcore fangirling over her, tripping over how she looked like some fragile masterpiece even while catching Z's. One worker giggled, saying she straight up looked like a snowy kitten. "Adorable, right, Bam?" A rap on the wood jump-scared them. "Oh snap, the young boss is here," someone choked out as they practically leaped into standing positions. Eric pushed in razor-sharp gaze, doing a full sweep. "Did those two workers ditch their posts again?" he demanded. A rookie staffer tripped over her words. "Yeah, boss, but we kept her totally safe." He gave a sharp nod. "Solid work." Then he swooped right in and scooped the royal off the pile, her face resting right against his heart. "I am taking over from here," he announced. She barely shifted as he carried her down the massive steps, holding her tight, but out of nowhere, her muscles locked up. Ocean blue eyes popped wide open, pure terror hitting her face before she gagged out a gasp. She went full survival mode, thrashing wild. Eric let out a low grunt, clamping down to keep her from dropping, as she fought like crazy, throwing kicks and scratching away. "Hold up till I set you down," he ordered with serious authority. "You drop right now, you are breaking something." A whimper escaped her, still pushing away, but she finally chilled out. He gently dropped her on the mattress, where she instantly death-gripped the comforter, shooting daggers at him with wide, shaking eyes. The dude didn't say a word, just analyzed her every move. It had been days since she moved in, and the reality check hit hard. This girl was not a fan of him, like at all. In her head, he realized with a sting, "I am probably just an Uber, just some muscle meant to haul her from point A to point B." His eyes locked onto a tiny detail. Stuck right in those blonde locks was a random scrap of thread. He leaned in slow, reaching to brush it away, but she instantly flinched, tucking her face away. My bad, didn't mean to spook you. Just grabbing that fuzz out of your hair real quick, he whispered. Did I scare you that bad? He asked, keeping it low-key. Locking eyes to check her vibe. The royal flashed those vivid blue irises back up at him, looking totally defensive and on edge. She honestly reminds me of that one snowy kitten. The gossiping staff's joke echoed back in his brain out of nowhere. A tiny smirk ghosted across his lips. Later that pitch-black night, the royal was completely knocked out in her room, but down the hall, relying on a single flickering flame, Eric was drowning in a mountain of paperwork, and then there were those sneaky workers dipping out the second nobody was looking. His gut was basically sounding alarm bells that they were covering something up. He rubbed his pounding head, letting out a rough exhale. Way too much drama on my plate right now. He grumbled his brain, switching over to the massive hunger crisis destroying his lands. But one specific wax-stamped envelope hijacked his attention. This drop was straight from his personal inside guy, just like he ordered the shadow trailed the Lord's every single footstep. And hitting the nail right on the head, the old man was a snake. The intel spelled out exactly where he was spotted, linking up with a mystery contact out in the city outskirts last night. Rewind to when his dad first pitched this whole marriage setup. Tying the knot with the Crispin family, Eric was literally the only dude thinking it was super sus. On paper, the contract looked flawless, like a major win-win. The rest of the world thought it was a genius power move, but his radar was going crazy, and he just could not ignore that massive red flag. From 0 hour, he started secretly tracking his old man's playbook. And that was exactly when he stumbled onto the truth. Rumors were flying that some random tavern girl kept sneaking into his dad's private quarters. Seeing his old man ditch his whole Mr. Perfect moral compass totally threw Eric off. But honestly, he decided to just brush it under the rug for now. They had a literal war to win, meaning his headspace needed to stay locked in. He still ran a background check on the chick, though, low-key suspecting she was some enemy spy planted to ruin them. But 0 red flags popped up, completely stuck at a dead end. He decided to let it slide. But post-war, things got absolutely unhinged. His dad actually dragged this girl back to their homeland, literally forcing his loyal right-hand man Sir Kelvinig to marry her as a second wife. This insane level of simping for a tavern worker forced Eric's hand. He collected all the receipts on his dad's messy behavior and shipped a massive report to Lady Cladina. Today, her response finally dropped. Stop updating me on this trash. Let the streets have him. Honestly, I am just thrilled I never have to eat dinner with that man again. That was Lady Cladina's literal exact message. Eric let out a heavy sigh, sinking into his chair. He was not shocked in the slightest. Real talk, his parents' whole dynamic always gave off pure corporate vibes with 0 actual romance involved. So this messy fallout totally made sense. He completely zoned out, trying to untangle the chaos in his brain. When a sudden shift caught his peripheral vision, the princess popped up in bed, rubbing her face exactly like a sleepy toddler. Padding barefoot through the dead silent room, she drifted straight toward his flickering candle. As she crept closer, his head snapped up, totally caught off guard. "My lady," he demanded, strictly, "do you need something?" Out of absolute nowhere, she lunged, grabbing his shirt like a lifeline for comfort and plopped right onto his lap. Eric's eyes practically bugged out of his head, his entire body freezing up from the sudden contact. Her deadpan stare locked onto his messy desk. Eric blinked hard. "You curious about those?" he muttered. "Trust me, it is boring stuff." She zoned in on the documents for a second before aggressively shredding them to pieces. Eric did not even flinch, just quietly watching her destroy his work. His intense gaze stayed glued to the girl right in front of him. This entire situation happened in a blur, the sudden wedding, their lives permanently chained together. And now it hit him heavy. This unpredictable girl was literally his forever partner. The exact second he embraced his role as the main heir, he threw all hopes for a fairy tale romance straight out the window. It was pure duty, 0 love involved. Suddenly, Miasa's chaotic energy shifted her dead eyes, locking onto one specific wax-sealed envelope. She slowly extended a hand to snatch it, but before her fingertips even grazed the paper, Eric's hand snaked out like lightning, trapping her wrist midair. "Stop!" His deep, raspy voice sliced right through the silence. Startled, she snapped her head up, suddenly realizing their faces were inches apart. "You are absolutely not ripping this one," he warned, lifting the paper way out of her strike zone. She stretched her arms up, desperately trying to snatch it back, but his grip was ironclad. "I am not handing this over," Eric deadpanned, his voice completely unbothered. "I am not done reading it yet." Fast forward to the next morning, Lady Cladina was locked in with her assistant, hardcore analyzing a mountain of paperwork. Right then, Miasa randomly strolled up to her, giving the Ice Queen a micro heart attack. True to her weird habits, the princess immediately flopped right onto the hard floor, passing out into a deep slumber. "I genuinely do not know what to even call her," Lady Cladina whispered, keeping her sharp eyes locked on the sleeping girl. She pivoted to Miasa's personal maid. "How do people address her back at the royal estate?" The servant, looking visibly irritated, shot back. Honestly, I have no clue." A total non-answer. Lady Cladina immediately narrowed her icy eyes, hardcore suspicion flashing across her elegant face. Her assistant leaned in close, softly dropping a suggestion. Why not just use her actual first name? It is such a stunning name, honestly. Lady Cladina paused to process that, gave a tiny nod and refocused on the girl. Miasa, she called out in a shockingly gentle tone. Bam! The princess practically springboarded upright, staring at the older woman with huge, blown-out eyes. Then flashing the most innocent toddler-like grin, she beamed right at her. Looks like that was a massive win, the assistant muttered under his breath. Lady Cladina instantly fixed her posture, slipping her boss lady mask back on. I will personally babysit her until dinner time. You are dismissed, she ordered, with zero room for debate. The sketchy maid bowed and dipped out. Lady Cladina tracked her exit gears, furiously turning in her head. The vibes were completely off. Out of the two royal maids assigned to the princess, one treated her job like an absolute joke, while the other one was basically a ghost always skipping out. There is definitely a dark reason behind this massive disrespect, Lady Cladina calculated grimly. I have no idea what sick game they are trying to play with us, she mumbled. Go fetch my headache meds. They should be stashed in my bedroom. Say less. Adel bowed deep and speed walked out. A few minutes later, when Adel returned with the pills, she walked in on a totally bizarre scene. Princess Miasa was literally curled up like a kitten right at Lady Cladina's feet. Wild. Lady Cladina was famously never the type of person to let anyone invade her personal bubble, much less use her legs as a mattress. Yet Lady Cladina was gently petting the traumatized girl's hair, her icy exterior completely melting into a rare, gentle expression. This kid you mentioned, she is 20 years old, right? Word on the street is, she watched half the royal court get brutally butchered right in front of her face as a literal toddler. Honestly, no wonder her mental state completely snapped, she whispered. Her elegant fingers kept brushing through Miasa's hair, totally giving off the energy of a mom soothing her own kid. Since day one, people have just been treating her like a pawn in their own sick games. It is honestly heartbreaking. Adele hovered in dead silence, soaking in her lady's hushed whispers. Lady Cladni's gaze was practically glued to the girl's features. She was undeniably stunning, but those eyes, they hit totally differently. Adele naturally tracked her stare. That is when it clicked. Lady Cladni was actually getting super attached to this royal. It made total sense. The princess rocked the exact same eye shade as her late daughter. No wonder the girl was tugging right at her lady's heartstrings. Miasa, Lady Cladni murmured super gently. Time for a little trim and a hair-brushing session. Cut to Eric finally clocking out from his brutal combat drills and immediately checking up on his girl like clockwork. She is chilling with Lady Cladni. A servant dropped the update instantly. Eric booked it straight to his mom's private wing. But the second he pushed those doors open, he completely froze. His high and mighty mother was literally sitting there cradling the princess's bare feet in her lap, gearing up for a pedicure. What in the world are you doing? Eric snapped, sounding completely mind-blown. His mom just blinked, totally unfazed. Oh, just giving Miasa a quick clip, so she isn't hurting when she walks. Eric just stood there buffering. Since when did his mom have an affectionate era? Sure, the woman might throw a crumb of pity someone's way, but she was never this hands-on, never this soft. She was always an absolute ice queen, running on pure logic, even with her own flesh and blood. But right now, that warm, glowing gaze locking onto the princess, that was the exact same vibe she used to exclusively give his late sister Rosie. A heavy knot formed in his chest. If she is using this girl as a stand-in for Rosie, I am shutting this down. I will handle it. Hand over the clippers, please, Eric demanded, stepping right up. But deep down, he was seriously second-guessing himself. His brain flashed back to the day they lost Rosie. His mom's face twisted into this haunting mix of pure trauma and dark obsession. Was he out of line for blocking this? Was he just ripping away her only coping mechanism? Pushing the guilt aside, he snagged the clippers anyway. The second his rough hands gripped her tiny ankles, Miasa shot him a lightning-fast peek. The friction clearly tickled. But she didn't jerk away or fight it. She just stayed perfectly still, chilling in total silence. A few quiet minutes rolled by, until Adele caught this tiny, unhappy pout forming on Miasa's lips. Clueless about what triggered it, the maid scrambled for a fix, snatching a sugary pastry from the tray and pressing it right to the royal's mouth. Miasa took the bite with zero hesitation, munching away quietly. Adele practically sagged with relief. What was that for? Eric demanded, glaring literal holes into the maid. Oh, it just hit me that Her Highness has a massive sweet tooth, Adele practically whispered, playing it safe. Makes sense. Eric gave a quick, sharp nod, buying the excuse. Over in her chair, Lady Cladni was just vibing, a soft smile creeping up. Her tone practically melted with pure joy as she whispered, so precious. She really is loving those treats. Fast forward to that evening, and Eric was playing personal chef, hand-feeding his girl. Like a total sweetheart, he kept coaching her. Take your time chewing, do not just inhale it. He kept his eyes locked on her, basically treating her like a toddler learning to eat. But while he was babysitting her bites, his brain was miles away. He just could not crack why his mom kept seeing Rosie's ghost in this girl. If it was literally just about the aesthetic of her irises, then his cousin Emberic, who rocked the exact same palette, should have triggered that same maternal love. But nah, his mom had always iced Emberic out, zero warmth whatsoever. 3 light taps on the door snapped him back to reality. The servant slipped in, dropping off a fresh steaming plate right on the table. But the split second, Miesa locked onto that food. Her face completely dropped. She clamped her hands over her ears, her entire body shaking like a leaf. Miesa Eric lunged forward, totally spooked. "Hey, talk to me, what is going on?" But the girl was totally mute, just jabbing a quivering finger at the meat before burying her face in the shadows. Eric tracked her gesture, and then the light bulb went off. "Is the roasted bird freaking you out?" He pressed super soft this time. Dead silence. She just hardcore avoided his gaze, keeping her head cranked away, refusing to even glimpse at the plate. "Got it." Eric's voice went dangerously low, with zero room for argument. "Get it out of here," he barked at the maid. The meat vanished in seconds. But Eric was still laser-focused on his girl, a seriously bad taste in his mouth. He had never, ever seen her spiral like that. He slumped back in his chair, mind racing. Did she get massive food poisoning from this before? Or is there some heavy dark trauma tied to that bird? The question was literally eating him alive. Flash forward to morning, Eric was sweating it out on the dirt. While the rest of the squad was sparring, he was just staring up at the clouds. The sun was absolutely blazing, but mentally, he was completely checked out of combat practice. Did Miesa even touch her breakfast? She was looking so rough last night, and his anxiety was spiking so hard he could not just stand there playing swords anymore. He ditched the arena to go track her down. The second he found her squad, a servant bowed low and delivered the bad news. "My lord, the lady took a massive plunge into the river earlier. Word is she spotted some koi, leaned way too far over the edge, and just slipped right under." Eric's blood ran cold. "She fell." "Yes, sir, but Lady Cladney was right there watching her." Eric let out a massive sigh, feeling the suffocating weight finally lift off his chest. The coast was totally clear. But the maid wasn't finished spilling the tea. "One more thing," she added. "The young miss is completely anti-church. She tagged along with Lady Cladney just fine, but the second they hit the chapel doors, hard pass. Lady Cladney ended up just dumping her with a random servant outside so she could go get her prayers out of the way." Eric soaked this intel in quietly. A light bulb went off. Miesa was extremely food-motivated when it came to sugar. "Listen up," he ordered. "I want a constant stash of candy on my desk, starting right now." Cut to that evening. The dinner vibes were immaculate. Miesa was actually chilling, happily letting Eric spoon-feed her like an absolute angel. Seeing her so calm gave him massive peace of mind. He scooped up another bite, hovering the fork right in front of her face. But gravity had other plans. The food slipped right off, landing dead center on her chest. "Wait, drop it," Eric panicked. "Let me get you a fresh bite." He reached out instinctively to flick the mess away, but his hand completely froze in midair. Reality check. The food was literally sitting on her cleavage. His brain short-circuited for a split second. Taking a deep breath, he pinched the crumb off her dress. But Miesa lunged like a hungry puppy, parting her lips to snatch it right out of his grip. Freaking out, Eric yanked his hand up. "I said no." But she wasn't taking no for an answer. She clamped both hands around his wrist, violently yanking his arm back down. Her face was bright pink, radiating pure, unadulterated frustration. And then, chomp. She literally bit his finger. Her teeth clamped down hard, but the sharp pain wasn't what sent Eric's pulse into overdrive. It was the insane, searing heat of her mouth wrapping completely around his bare skin. He stopped breathing entirely, snatching his hand back like he'd touched a hot stove. The princess blinked, looking just as completely stunned. Time stood still for a second before her gaze violently shifted to something right behind him. Faster than lightning, pure rage completely consumed her features. She grabbed the edge of the tablecloth and absolutely ripped it. Glassware and plates shattered violently against the floorboards. Lurking in the doorway, her personal maid let out a choked gasp. What kind of crazy drama is going down, she thought wildly. Stepping up, she carefully escorted the fuming princess out of the dining room for bath time. Eric was left completely paralyzed in his chair. His gaze slowly drifted down to his hand, fixating on those tiny red indentations permanently stamped onto his skin. Flash forward to midnight. The princess was dead to the world, snoring softly, but Eric was staring at the ceiling, fighting demons. No matter what mental gymnastics he did, he absolutely could not scrub the ghost of her fiery touch off his fingertips. He aggressively buried his face in his hands. She's legally my wife, but her mindset is literally toddler level. She doesn't even comprehend the concept of a husband. I can't do this. He gasped for air, suffocating under the guilt. I am absolutely forbidden from viewing her like that. Tonight was a massive mistake. Jump to the next morning and Lady Cladney was already dropping bombs. We are officially running the poetry gala this coming Wednesday. Eric's face instantly scrunched up. Do we seriously have to subject ourselves to that? 100%. She fired back, completely unfazed. Those high society vultures are going to be circling for fresh drama. We need to flex on them right now and prove that we are thriving. Honestly, this tea party was no joke. Every single month, the elite matriarchs from 3 powerhouse families would link up. To fake smile through poems, swap opinions, and let's be real, farm for toxic intel. House Cladney was up to bat for hosting duties, but the real elephant in the room was their guest list. Marchioness Crispin and her daughter were confirmed to pull up. This was going to be their very first face-to-face showdown, since the entire engagement blew up in their faces. Even though the Cladney squad was totally innocent in that mess Eric bet his life, the Crispins were still extremely salty about it. Wrapping up the strategy meeting, the duo escorted Miesa out to the botanical gardens. The princess absolutely bolted through the glass doors with pure golden retriever energy, bouncing from plant to plant, completely mesmerized by every little leaf. While Lady Cladney was barking orders and running checks, Eric just leaned back silently, obsessing over Miesa as she explored. "Hey, little miss, how come you skipped visiting our wing today?" a random maid asked, strolling right up to her, with a tiny bird cage swinging in her grip. The millisecond Miesa turned around, her gaze zeroed in on those frantically flapping wings, her brain completely flatlined. She was violently ripped back to that nightmare scenario, drowning in the toxic venom her own mother had whispered into her ear, words that lived rent-free in her skull. The trauma hit her like a literal freight train. All the blood vanished from her face. Ripping a blood-curdling shriek from her lungs, she scrambled blindly backward until she totally wiped out onto the dirt floor. The whole room went dead silent. Miesa Eric roared, sprinting across the greenhouse like a madman. He slid into the dirt right next to her trembling frame. "Miesa, look at me. Are you hurt? Who did this?" "We literally have zero clue," a maid sputtered defensively. She just randomly freaked out. But before the excuses could keep rolling, Miesa threw her arms around Eric's neck in a death grip, smashing her face into his chest like a terrified toddler hiding from a monster. Violent shivers racked her spine as she clung to him for dear life. He instantly locked his arms around her fragile body, acting as her ultimate human shield. Well, obviously the maid snarked with zero empathy. "The Royal Highness is completely anti-bird. Then maybe you should have dropped that little warning ahead of time." Lady Cladney absolutely exploded, her voice dripping with pure venom. "We're the ones babysitting her, 24/7, the maid shot back with massive attitude. "Why are you jumping down our throats over one minor glitch?" Lady Cladney's eyes turned into absolute daggers. She swallowed the scream bubbling up in her throat. Honestly, she knew these maids were completely sketchy from day one, still vibrating like a leaf against Eric's chest. Miesa refused to loosen her chokehold. Watching her completely break down, he murmured, "I'm evacuating her to get some fresh air." Not even waiting for a green light, he scooped the princess up bridal style and marched straight out of the glass dome. His brain was spinning out of control. Was this the missing puzzle piece the whole time? Remember how she totally freaked out over that roasted quail? Yeah, Eric wasn't taking any chances. He carries her straight out to this gorgeous garden setup, settling them both onto a rustic wooden swing. Tucking her safely against his chest, his voice drops to this incredibly soft whisper. "Relax," he promises. "Any bird tries to pull up, I'm swinging on it. Just take a breather." Miesa tilts her head just staring up at him. The dude looks like an actual statue, unfazed, totally solid. And he wasn't capping. His eyes were darting at every single rustle, locked onto the perimeter like a hawk, catching every tiny flutter of wings. Finally feeling safe in his arms, her eyelids flutter shut. Melting into his chest, she totally knocks out. Wrapped up in his intense protective vibe. Out of nowhere, Eric crashes the moment, rocking this super knowing smirk. "Wow, looking real cozy with the wifey there." Eric just shoots him a deadpan glare, but Eric isn't backing down. "Man, the streets are talking. The gossip about you two made it all the way to my estate." Eric's expression instantly darkens. Who's running their mouth now? He snaps, visibly irritated. He already knew his uncle was desperately plotting to make Eric the main heir. So this kind of drama was a massive red flag. Eric just kicks back looking casual. Heard it's some redhead maid named Vina. Plus, this lanky brunette chick. That's the word on the street anyway. Eric lets out this massive, exhausted breath. Look, Eric knew his boy Eric was all about that bachelor life and literally couldn't care less about inheriting the title. These two were certified trench brothers. They'd saved each other from getting packed up on the battlefield way too many times to count. "Appreciate the heads up. Add it to my tab," Eric mutters. "All good, bro," Eric shrugs, plopping down onto the grass. But then his vibe shifts, locking onto Eric. "For real though, what's your endgame here? Do not tell me you're actually catching feelings, because from where I'm sitting you are doing way too much." A sly grin creeps onto his face. Rumor has it her feet haven't even touched the floor since moving in. "Because you're literally her personal Uber." Eric scowls. "Bro, she has a bad leg. Plus, she's practically a walking hazard if I don't keep an eye on her." Eric shakes his head, clearly lost. "Make it make sense. I thought this whole act was just a flex to throw the king off our scent. But nobody's even watching us right now. Why are you still playing the devoted husband?" His tone drips with actual annoyance now. He squints at Eric. "Wait, you're not actually planning to lock this down permanently, are you?" Eric's ice-cold demeanor instantly melts as he gently pats the sleeping girl's hair. When he speaks, he's totally grounded. "Look, the bride's identity is irrelevant. As long as it levels up House Claudiny, I'm game." Bagging the princess buys us some desperately needed breathing room from the king's radar. And as for treating her right, she's literally clueless. The girl doesn't even realize whose lap she's passed out on. I just refuse to let anyone bully her. Amberic drags his hand down his face, letting out this heavy exhale. Yeah, okay, fair point. Fast forward a couple of days to this super bougie poetry slam. The greenhouse is absolutely packed with high society ladies, all chatting and gossiping as they grab their seats. Spotting from the crowd, the notorious Marchioness, Crispin, and her daughter. The second everyone settles, our main duo makes their grand entrance. They drop some basic, super polite pleasantries, but you could literally cut the tension with a knife. The whole room is practically staring a hole through them, this silent judgment suffocating the space. The beef between the rival families is so thick it's toxic, and every single eyeball in there is glued to the couple. Eric, though, he wasn't sticking around for the drama. He smoothly sweeps Miesa up, bridal style hits the crowd with a quick thanks for having us, and heads straight for the exit. But before they can escape, the Crispin heir completely corners them. "We need to talk," she whispers, sounding incredibly desperate. Eric pivots, glaring daggers at her. "What now? Tailgating me is a terrible move. I'll make it fast," she shoots back, staring him dead in the eye. "Whatever you do, absolutely do not get her pregnant." She drops this bombshell with total conviction. Eric just goes completely mute. He can literally feel the other nobles eavesdropping, so he plays it smart and keeps his mouth shut. The Crispin girl who's been nervously crushing a handkerchief this whole time just lets it flutter to the floor. "Catch you later then," she mutters before dipping out. Cut to her carriage ride home. Her toxic mom leans in. "Did you execute the plan?" "Yeah, Mom," her daughter mumbles back into the silence. Real talk, LaCane Crispin's entire existence was basically a boot camp on how to be a flawless little aristocrat. As for what she actually wanted out of life, literally nobody gave a damn. Later that night, Eric is grinding away in his study. His desk is completely swallowed by paperwork and intel reports. The guy's mental load is insane right now. The fallout from the war was brutal, and their food supply is dangerously low, like barely enough to survive the summer. If they can just clutch up and make it through this dry spell, the returning troops can hit the fields by fall, and they'll finally be back in business. Usually a massive flex, like their war victory, would mean massive government bailouts to fix this mess. But nah, the king totally lowballed them with trash-tier loot. We're talking one rusty iron mine and a single royal bride. That was the grand prize. The mine is basically a long-term side hustle. It's definitely not putting bread on the table right now. Money-wise, they aren't totally broke. But the actual nightmare is the pressure from his subordinates. With his dad MIA, all the vassals are staring him down, waiting for him to drop a miracle master plan. The sheer weight of carrying the whole family is slowly suffocating him way more than he ever thought possible. While his brain was doing mental gymnastics, he felt a sudden warmth against his side. Out of nowhere, Miesa silently crawled right onto his lap. She locked her arms around him in her usual clingy way. Eric froze up it, hitting him all over again. He still didn't have a single clue how to answer Amberic's interrogations. The guy couldn't even lie to himself. Why did he let her get this close? Why was he so soft on her? Letting out a heavy sigh, he gave her back a gentle, rhythmic pat. Without a word, Miesa lifted a finger, aiming straight at a glass jar sitting on his desk. Catching her drift, Eric grabbed the exact piece of candy he had been saving just for her. He carefully dropped the sweet into her palm, and she immediately tossed it back. Slowly, a tiny, genuine smile crept across her face. And honestly, every single time he caught that little grin, the crushing weight on his shoulders just melted away. It was wild. Finding peace in this completely broken girl gave him this bizarre, deep-rooted sense of comfort he couldn't put into words. Fast forward to the next morning. The Crispin family's maids showed up at the estate demanding their lady's forgotten handkerchief. Instantly, Lady Claudini's gaze turned razor-sharp. She knew the aristocratic playbook inside and out. Leaving a personal item at your married ex-fiancé's mansion. That was a massive red flag. It was basically a shameless love letter. "Ida," she commanded. Her tone was completely chill, but her voice was laced with absolute venom. "Round up the staff and tear this place apart looking for it. Oh, and make absolutely sure everyone whispers that this little cloth belongs strictly to Marchioness Crispin. We are killing any toxic gossip before it even starts." Following her orders, Claudini's squad immediately launched their hunt, working side by side with the Crispin crew. But right in the middle of the chaos, a super shady meetup was going down between Crispin's head maid and the princess's personal attendant, the exact same snake who followed her all the way from the royal palace. The head maid kept her voice dead quiet but deadly serious. "I will keep this short. You need to permanently eliminate her within the next 2 years. No excuses." A totally wicked smirk stretched across the royal servant's face. "Honestly, say the word and I will drop her by tomorrow morning." "Absolutely not," the head maid snapped back, shutting her down instantly. "Killing her overnight screams foul play, plus we cannot keep sneaking onto this estate." The royal servant leaned in close, a totally unhinged glint in her eyes. "Bet. Just give me the signal and I will bring the job straight to your doorstep." Later that evening, the whole family sat down for dinner. Margrave Claudine actually showed up for once, but the second he locked eyes on the princess, he was completely triggered. Even a stray mutt has better table manners. He spat out his entire vibe, absolutely dripping with pure disgust. Sitting there looking flawless, Lady Claudine fired back with the most sarcastic sugar-coated smile imaginable. Honey, if looking at her stresses you out that much, why not just pretend she is invisible? Let's be real, she definitely does not want you staring at her anyway. The Margrave practically exploded. He shoved his chair back and shot to his feet, glaring daggers at them. But right before storming out, he dropped one final heavy warning. Do not forget our mandatory check-in with the king is coming up. You better make sure she does not have a single scratch on her. You see, over in the kingdom of Esquire, it was an absolute rule for newlyweds to show their faces at the bride's family home exactly 50 days after tying the knot. Fast forward to the big day. Eric stepped through the grand doors of the royal palace, keeping Miesa glued to his side. He dropped into a perfectly respectful bow. An absolute honor to see you, your majesty, he declared with pure formality, keeping a protective but gentle grip on his wife. Ah, it truly has been a minute, the king barked out, flashing a massive, unsettling grin. Meanwhile, in classic Miesa fashion, she totally just flopped onto the marble floor, completely zoned out. The tyrant let out a dark chuckle. Since my sweet girl looks so healthy, I am expecting some baby news to drop very soon. Eric kept his head dipped low. Since day one of this forced marriage, he had been walking on eggshells, doing whatever it took to keep the royal psycho off his back. We are praying for the exact same thing, sire, but regrettably my wife is still battling her fragile health. He dodged smoothly. Right then, a royal lackey scurried over, whispering some shady intel straight into the king's ear. Instantly, the monarch's fake smile vanished. With a quick, brutal wave of his hand, he shooed the servant away. When he finally spoke, his tone was completely lethal. Do not play games with my time. Miesa's little maids dropped some seriously wild gossip on me. They claimed that even though the bedsheets looked like a literal crime scene, they did not find a single trace of it on my daughter when they washed her. Which really got my brain working. Maybe you are actively dodging a royal heir. Talk to me, Eric. Are you actually keeping her completely untouched? Just so you can annul this entire marriage. Panic spiked straight through Eric's chest. I swear on my life that is not the case, he defended fiercely. He seriously thought his bribe money had kept those maids quiet, but he was totally played. The king's eyes flared with pure malice. Looks like House Claudine is actively trying to scam the throne. Honestly, I could execute you all for high treason right now. The color totally drained from Eric's face. He never cared if he caught a blade to the neck. But if this lunatic wiped out his entire family, that was a nightmare. Get over here, Miesa the king demanded. The broken girl literally crawled across the floor toward him. He pet her hair, flashing a straight-up terrifying grin. My perfect little puppet. I bet you will spill the actual truth. Did that man actually touch you on your wedding night? Total silence. Snapping, the king twisted his grip, brutally ripping her head backward by her hair. Open your mouth and speak. He was completely unhinged now. Her bottom lip started trembling violently, and then out of nowhere, actual words stuttered past her lips. It hurts. Eric's jaw practically hit the floor in pure shock. He had literally never heard her utter a single syllable before. Right here it hurts, the princess mumbled again, shakily pointing at her head while desperately trying to explain the pain with clumsy little hand motions. A collective gasp echoed through the grand hall guests, averting their eyes in sheer second-hand embarrassment. Enough, the king barked, shooting up from his throne. Shut it down. Nobody wants to hear the graphic details of my sister's honeymoon phase. He ruthlessly kicked Miesa out of his way. Grab this freak and get out of my sight, he growled at Eric. Eric's jaw locked. Pure rage bubbling under his skin, but his hands were tied in front of the monarch. Without uttering a single syllable, he scooped Miesa up and stormed out of the royal court. The carriage ride back was suffocatingly quiet. He kept her securely on his lap, completely mute. Miesa stayed frozen like a statue, before quietly passing out from pure emotional exhaustion. The second they hit the estate, Eric shattered the dead silence, locked down the entire second floor of the West Wing. Nobody goes in. The royal maids swapped totally bewildered glances, completely lost on the sudden tension. Miesa squirmed weakly against his chest, but his iron grip didn't budge. Cullen, he commanded his most trusted guy. Watch the door. 0 exceptions. Once inside the bedroom, he dropped Miesa onto the mattress. His tone dropped dangerously low, practically dripping with venom. We are totally off the grid now. You can scream, you can sob, nobody is coming to save you. So talk. I know exactly what you are hiding. Miesa gulped reality, hitting her like a truck. Her cover was officially blown. Babe, why not just pretend Miesa doesn't even exist? She whispered flawlessly. Eric turned into an absolute statue, his jaw practically hitting the floor. Honestly, she continued, I highly doubt she even wants your attention anyway. Boom. She dropped the exact same dialogue Lady Claudine had used during dinner. Eric felt his lungs seize up completely, mind blown. And what about that insane stunt you pulled in front of His Majesty? He demanded, his voice, a lethal blade. A tiny, savage smirk played on Miesa's lips. Those vultures will be hunting for spicy drama. We have to flex the perfect couple act. The realization hit Eric like a freight train. Once again, a flawless copy-paste of Lady Cladina's private conversation. But despite her confident delivery, he caught her fingers shaking uncontrollably. Behind that badass facade, she was absolutely terrified. Backing off, he gave her some breathing room. "My bad, I never intended to scare you," he murmured, stepping away from the mattress. A heavy, suffocating pause filled the room. Rumor had it the princess watched her own mother perish at just 8 years old. Then she had a front-row seat to her siblings getting massacred by the king himself. Playing the crazy girl wasn't a glitch, it was her ultimate survival strategy. Eric stood there totally paralyzed by the weight of her trauma. He desperately wanted to be the comforting shoulder to drop some words of wisdom, but his brain short-circuited, leaving him sitting awkwardly in the quiet space. Fast forward to sunrise, Miasa's personal maid barged in with the morning feast. She marched right up, nudging the royal awake. Out of nowhere, she mercilessly ripped the blankets away for a spot check. Eric narrowed his eyes, tracking her every move like a hawk. He fully expected the tyrant king to chop off these maids' heads for capping. But nope, they were back on their worst behavior. Snooping, digging, trying to secure proof that the newlyweds had actually sealed the deal. "How about you let my wife get some actual rest?" Eric snapped with zero hesitation. The servant jumped, turning to ice under his death glare. She gave a rapid nod, massive red flags flashing in her eyes, then scrambled out of the bedroom, kicking off her daily routine. Miasa activated her full unhinged mode. Step 1. Absolutely trash the vanity, turning it into a total disaster zone. Step 2. Unleash her inner feral beast and literally rip her dark-haired husband's wardrobe apart with her teeth. The grand finale, snatching her snitch of a maid and ripping out chunks of hair until the woman shrieked in agony. Only after sparking pure chaos could Miasa finally check off her fake insanity to-do list. But today's vibes were completely off. That spy of a maid took way too long analyzing her physical state. Miasa knew exactly what was up. Just picturing that raven-haired duke made her blood run cold. Now that her masquerade was busted, what if he spilled the tea? What if he kicked her out into the streets? Panic gripped her heart. Sure, he was majorly triggered last night, but deep down he did not give off villain energy, nor the vibe of a guy who'd plot her downfall. Still, the paranoia was eating her alive. If he snitched, she was doomed. Running on pure adrenaline, Miasa sprinted into the main corridor. Lady Cladina was chilling right there, looking ridiculously poised as always. "Oh, Miasa, sweetie, did you get enough sleep?" she asked with genuine warmth. Spotting her safe haven, Miasa kept her mouth shut. She just straight up face-planted into Cladina's lap, hiding her face like a terrified toddler. The older woman gently brushed her messy hair. "You poor thing, still dreaming?" she hummed. A massive wave of relief washed over Miasa. Cladina was still her ride or die. Their bond was solid. While the princess caught her breath, the lady smoothly flipped her attention to the head butler. They jumped right back into estate business. "We copped that premium mojo timber for the landscape," the butler updated. Instantly, Miasa's internal alarm started ringing. "Mojo wood, that stuff is ridiculously high tier. Even the emperor's decorators are stingy with it." Next, the guy whipped out a chunk of artisan butter. "These top-shelf blocks run 20 pesos a pop," he stated. Miasa's eyes practically bugged out of her skull. Dropping that kind of cash on dairy, spotting her total shock. A soft smile touched Lady Cladni's lips as she offered up the treat. "Care for a taste?" she asked. Misa took a tiny, hesitant nibble, chewing like she was analyzing every single flavor. The palace maids had already spilled the tea. The cash dropped on this tiny snack could easily score a massive sack of flour. Her mind flashed back to the previous night. That brooding black-haired guy had been stressing hard over the kingdom's food crisis and their starving citizens. Like, wouldn't basic flour be way more practical than fancy butter? She panicked internally. But Lady Cladni was absolutely glowing. "Oh, you're a fan," she cooed sweetly. "Secure 5 more barrels immediately," she commanded the butler. Misa let out a heavy, silent breath. The math just wasn't mathing for her. Why did this noblewoman and that dark-haired knight always look so weirdly thrilled whenever she stuffed her face? Was it genuine affection? Zero chance. In her entire life, not a single soul had ever given a damn about her. Fast forward to the evening. Eric rolled up right on schedule after his nightly shifts. But this time Misa instantly shrank back, totally dreading the thought of leaving with him. Even Lady Cladni looked completely baffled. Misa shot her these massive, desperate puppy dog eyes that practically screamed, "Please do not leave me alone with this guy. Save me." But before anyone could drop a single word, Eric smoothly closed the distance. He swooped down, scooping her right into his arms like it was just another Tuesday. Panic hijacked Misa's brain. She gripped his shoulders for dear life, her entire body locking up in pure terror as he leaned in, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Misa," he murmured, "it would be extremely smart to just roll with me. After all, I've kept my mouth shut about last night's little incident." She physically jolted all the oxygen, completely vanishing from her lungs. That didn't sound like a friendly heads up. That sounded like straight-up blackmail. Cut to the dining hall. The two of them squared off from opposite ends of the heavy table. I'm guessing you can feed yourself tonight, Eric stated, completely unbothered. Misa just shot daggers at him. This was literally the same dude who held her hostage with a secret 5 minutes ago. Yeah, she was officially a hater. She glanced down at the fancy silverware, sitting awkwardly in her grip, her eyebrows knitting together in heavy confusion. It had been a solid 10 years since she last touched proper cutlery. Her hands shook violently as she desperately tried to slice her meal, forcing herself to fake the muscle memory. Eric, tracking her every move like a hawk, offered a slight nod. You actually handle those quite well. Misa scowled hard, absolutely not buying his fake praise. There was literally zero grace in her clumsy, jerky motions. What an absolute weirdo, she roasted him in her head. Fed up and ticking like a time bomb, she ditched the fork entirely and just started tearing into the food, bare-handed chewing with pure spite. Eric watched her feral feast in absolute silence before finally breaking the tension. All right, what's triggering you now? He asked. Misa glared right through his soul, aggressively licking the grease off her fingers. Wasn't it glaringly obvious? If the staff saw her eating politely, her cover would be totally blown. Why risk exposing her wild child act? Eric just propped his chin on his hand, letting out a long, exhausted sigh. Message received, he finally muttered. Now drop the act. Misa instantly turned to stone. Was he mad? Did she push the envelope too far? But instead of blowing up, Eric stood up, dragged his heavy chair right next to hers, and invaded her personal space. Her brain short-circuited. She had gone feral at the table plenty of times before, so why was he switching up the vibe tonight? Before she could connect the dots, he reached out gently, tipped her chin up, and smoothly wiped the mess right off her lips. His tone was soft but commanding. Do you want me to hand-feed you again? Misa blinked in shock, then gave a slow, hesitant nod. Okay, maybe this guy wasn't as clueless as she originally thought. Following her silent cue, Eric went right back to spoon-feeding her, wrapping up their dinner in thick, heavy silence. Post-dinner, Misa got dragged off by her personal maid for bath time, leaving Eric to play guard dog out in the hallway. The second the doors shut, the head maid ruthlessly dumped a freezing bucket of water right over Misa's head, making her violently flinch. Misa snapped her head up, a lethal glare flashing in her eyes. The servant's hostility was dialed up to an 11 tonight, and Misa knew exactly why it was all displaced rage over her powerful husband lurking just past the door. Refusing to just take the abuse, Misa fully committed to her crazy persona, wrapping her fingers around a thick chunk of the maid's hair and yanking with zero mercy. If they wanted a psycho princess, she would give them a total psycho. The maid violently shoved her to the wet tiles, sparking a full-blown messy catfight. What is going on in here? Eric barked, throwing the door wide open after hearing the chaotic crash. The maid instantly snapped to attention, plastering on a fake, sickly sweet smile. Oh, your grace, the princess just threw one of her wild tantrums, so I had to physically restrain her. She pulls this stunt all the time, honestly, we have to use force. Eric's eyes went pitch black with fury. Then step aside and let me handle my wife. He took an imposing step into the humid room. The maid stumbled back, her fake smile cracking hard. But your grace, this is way below your pay grade. You absolutely should not dirty your hands with such a grueling, messy chore. Eric's voice dropped an octave, dripping with icy authority. Caring for my own wife is literally my job, is it not? The maid completely froze. Cornered, she reluctantly started listing off the supposed VIP spa routine they gave the princess. She rattled off lies about fancy shampoos, luxurious body oils, and premium skin creams. Misa sat quietly in the tub, her knuckles turning white. What absolute trash. They had never shown her an ounce of that luxury. Behind closed doors, she was treated worse than a stray dog blasted with freezing water and left shivering on the floor. After delivering her fake tutorial, the maid finally booked it. The door slammed shut with a heavy echoing thud. Eric let out a low, stressed breath. He had totally played the hero on impulse, but now the awkward reality of bathing her was hitting him like a truck. What did I just get myself into? How on earth am I gonna handle this? He shot Miesa a sideways glance, clearing his throat to break the mega awkward silence. Can you actually wash yourself? His voice dropped to a low whisper. Honestly, the mental image of the quote-unquote mad princess handling her own bubble bath was totally wild. Miesa gave him a hard, deadpan headshake. Right, got it, Eric mumbled. You could practically see the steam rising as his ears flushed beet red. Shifting into hyper-focus mode, he started organizing her bath supplies, lining up every single bottle and soap bar like he was prepping for open-heart surgery. Miesa just sat there silently, tracking his every move. This dude was a total mystery to her. Was he about to snap again? Because if he was on edge, playing along was her only option. Her survival basically hinged on keeping him chill. Pushing herself up, she closed the distance between them and let the towel completely drop to the floor. Eric instantly yanked his gaze away, flinching like he had just touched a hot stove. What the heck are you? He started, but the sentence literally died in his throat. He completely froze. Slashed across the back of Miesa was a chaotic web of raised red marks, brutal lashings, and evidence of pure torture. In her mind, full compliance was the only strategy since the exact second second they crossed paths. She was terrified of him. What if he was just another version of the king? What if he pulled out a whip the second he lost his temper? Just flashing back to that trauma sent violent shivers down her spine. Even if he seemed different, crossing the line could trigger something lethal. Her muscles locked up, dropping straight to the cold tiles she faced, the wall curling up and bracing for the inevitable strike. But the impact never hit. Instead, a massive rough hand lightly traced the damage, shockingly gentle. "Who did this to you?" His tone was sharp and super agitated, but buried right under that anger, pure, unfiltered worry. Miesa blinked, completely thrown off. Was that pity? Nobody had ever sounded that genuinely heartbroken for her before. Pivoting slowly, she breathed out the toxic truth. The king. Eric exhaled a massive, shaky breath radiating some serious bottled-up rage. His whole vibe just messed with her head even more. Was he ticked off at her or at the guy who hurt her? Cutting the silence, he instantly got back to drawing the bath. He dipped his hand in checking the temperature like he was handling fragile glass. "Tell me if it burns or anything," he commanded. The dude sounded incredibly awkward, but rock solid. "I have literally never washed anyone before. So, scream if I mess up." Miesa just gave this totally dazed nod. Why was he sweating the details so hard? He totally could have pulled a maid move and just dumped freezing water on her. But nope, he was literally following the skincare manual step by step, trying way too hard to get it right. He took his time with her hair, massaging the suds in with crazy precision. The guy was so impossibly soft, a total 180 from the abuse she grew up with, that her eyelids started drooping. She was seriously about to pass out in the tub. "Okay, body wash time," Eric muttered. His hands literally hovered in midair as they drifted lower, the tips of his ears catching fire again. Miesa instantly squirmed, fighting off this crazy, ticklish vibe sparking across her skin. She whipped around by pure instinct, instantly colliding with his intense stare. Deadlock. Neither moved an inch. The so-called crazy chick, who was supposed to be totally numb to this stuff, suddenly snapped back to reality. The raw emotion painted on his face, the super quiet apologies he kept dropping every time their skin brushed. It hit different. And boom, for the absolute first time, Miesa realized that regular humans would be dying of cringe in a scenario like this. And guess what? She was catching those exact feelings too. This weird fiery heat creeping up her neck. That totally awkward butterfly effect. Was she actually blushing right now? Fast forward to post-bath. Eric was so completely drained, he just face-planted right into the mattress. The second they hit the master suite, Miesa stalled out before awkwardly perching on the edge of the bed. "You need to crash too," he mumbled, physically dragging her down next to him. 2 seconds later, he was knocked out cold. Miesa just stared at the giant sleeping like a log right next to her. Like he was the one running on fumes, so why was he always obsessing over her getting enough sleep? Literally the minute she thought she had his personality boxed up, he pulled a fast one on her again. 24 hours ago, he was a massive threat. Today, he looked ready to cry over her battle scars. But one thing was crystal clear. This guy was a massive upgrade from the absolute monsters she grew up with. Propping herself up, she leaned in super close, scanning his features like a hawk. Dude was out like a light, moving like an absolute ninja. She slid off the sheets and snuck over toward the vanity. A hot minute later, Eric groaned awake, grasping at empty air. The bed was completely deserted, but some weird whispering echoed from the closet. Tracking the noise, he spotted Miesa glued to the full-length mirror, her lips moving a mile a minute as she obsessively rehearsed lines she had picked up from the staff earlier that day. The second she caught his reflection lurking in the doorway, she parroted Lady Claudine with this insanely upbeat, peppy voice. "Miesa is just doing a little practice run, honey. Do not be so mean." Fast forward to dawn, the royal maids swarmed the suite for their ultra-invasive morning inspection. Since Eric had crashed there the night before, they definitely had some snooping to catch up on. They literally spread her legs to investigate, throwing mega side-eye. If those two actually did the deed, why was the scene 0% messy? Usually, she just zoned out during these degrading checks, but today, the vibe was entirely different. Yesterday had unlocked the feeling of pure cringe. She had caught those awkward vibes with Eric, and now having these maids all up in her business felt like a massive violation. Flashing back to Eric, it hit her dude had just cracked another one of her biggest secrets, back when she was playing the total psycho card. Getting roasted by randoms meant literally nothing, but the idea of someone catching her real personality and laughing at it, especially him, yeah, that would actually destroy her. A sick knot twisted in her gut. She absolutely knew she looked like a total freak to him. He was probably grossed out just glancing her way. And honestly, she couldn't even blame the guy. The vicious words of a head maid echoed in her skull. What kind of dude would ever want to knock up a walking disaster like her? That trauma cut deep. It had been a minute since Miesa spiraled into self-sabotage, but the urge was itching back. She needed to cause a scene to force everyone to remember she was the designated villain, later dragging her supposedly injured leg down the gloomy corridors. She plotted her next move. Smash a priceless vase. Nah, she instantly scrapped that thought. Wrecking the property of a totally broke, starving household was way too low even for her, so Plan B sparked in her mind. take the damage herself. The second her servant zoned out, Miyasa braced her body and threw herself forward. But right before she ate dirt, a massive hand snatched her waist, leaving her dangling in thin air. She whipped her head around. Bam. Her husband. He had basically spawned out of nowhere. "I am taking over for my wife, clear out," Eric snapped at the servant, sending the girl packing. Keeping his eyes locked on Miyasa, he guided her out to the courtyard, immediately shutting down her anxiety. He swore he chased off every single winged creature on the property. "You are totally safe, 0 birds in sight," he whispered softly. Then, tilting his head, he dropped the question, "Do you seriously hate them that much?" Miyasa gave a stiff nod. Eric let the silence hang heavy for a beat. Any specific reason? Miyasa mentally rolled her eyes. So intrusive. This dude was literally a walking interrogation. "Bird 8, she mumbled the raspy syllables, barely escaping her throat. "8 what exactly?" Eric doubled down. Miyasa shot him a literal death glare. Like bro kidnapped her to this spot and now he was interrogating her. "It is just us out here, Miyasa," Eric murmured, trying to create a safe space. No filter needed. But honestly, privacy was absolutely not the issue. She squirmed aggressively, picking at her own fingers. Eric zeroed in on her, his intense stare practically hacking into her brain, to download the truth. "Wait, is it physically hard for you to talk?" he suddenly blurted. Miyasa froze. Holy crap, he actually got it. "Have you been silent for so long that your brain strings the sentences together perfectly? But pushing them past your lips feels impossible," Eric guessed accurately. Miyasa had literally never psychoanalyzed herself like that. But hearing him break it down, it made total sense. She gave a slow, hesitant nod. "Look, ditch the nodding, just push out a tiny sound," he coached her with raw confidence. She panicked a little, but his unwavering eye contact forced her hand. She choked out a raspy, "Okay," but it sounded completely tragic and weird. Mortified, she slammed both hands over her mouth, her face practically catching fire. "Hey, practice makes perfect," Eric hyped her up. Out of nowhere, he grabbed her palm and pressed it flat against his own neck. "Feel this. Just copy the vibration," he instructed, letting her sense the deep rumble of his vocal cords. Miyasa stared, instantly fascinated. "My vocal coach taught me this trick, back during puberty when my pitch kept cracking." "Want to give it a shot?" he offered, stepping back. She gave him a blank, confused stare. "What the heck is a voice crack?" Eric processed the question, then completely lost it, cracking up. Miyasa scowled. "Seriously, what was the joke? Was she a comedian to him?" My bad," he choked out, wiping a tear. "That curveball completely caught me off guard." Switching back to soft boy mode, he clarified, "Growing up makes your throat act weird. That is what I meant." "Any other burning questions?" he nudged. Miyasa paused, her brain flashing back to the relentless nagging from her servants. Inhaling sharply, she dropped the ultimate bomb. They were totally alone, yet he had not made a single move on her. Eric looked completely lost. "Come again," Miyasa mentally screamed. How dense was this guy? Left with 0 options, she literally pointed to her own anatomy, exactly where her maids gossiped about. Eric looked like he had just been electrocuted. His whole face turned the color of a stop sign. In a total panic, he shoved her knees together. "Keep those closed, please," he stammered, his voice totally cracking. Miyasa just stared him down silently, judging his meltdown. "Do you get it now? When are we doing the deed?" She dropped casually. Eric literally stopped breathing. The absolute 0 hesitation wrecked him, but to Miyasa, it was simple math. If they did not officially seal the deal, the creepy royal family could yank her back to the capital at any second. I honestly do not know." Eric finally confessed, sweating. "I need a minute. Let us actually catch a vibe first, okay? Then maybe this won't be so incredibly awkward for you." He practically jumped up, desperate to flee the conversation. "Let me give you a tour of the glass house instead." He extended his palm like a gentleman. Miyasa paused. Sightseeing was a massive waste of time. But whatever, she grabbed his hand. The spicy stuff was clearly off the menu for today, so she might as well chill and vibe with her awkward husband for a bit. Walking her through the massive estate, Eric smoothly asked, "So your broken leg magically healed?" Miyasa shot him a look, then flashed a smug, evil little smirk. "You totally played me," Eric sighed, genuinely impressed. She beamed like a proud menace, absorbing the validation. But instantly her brain clicked. Walking perfectly ruined her whole tragic aesthetic. So without missing a beat, she threw both arms up like a toddler demanding a piggyback. Eric flinched, utterly baffled. It finally clicked for him. Without skipping a beat, he sweeps her right off her feet. "Guess someone spent way too much time walking today." He teased, a soft chuckle escaping his lips. Miyasa nervously twirled a strand of hair, low-key freaking out inside. "Okay, this guy. He is actually way sweeter than I gave him credit for." Deep down, she silently prayed this gentle side of him was not just a temporary act. Suddenly, a random memory hit her. She flashed back to a priestess, lecturing her about the absolute chaos of a wedding night. The lady had totally deadpanned it, sounding exactly like a bored robot checking off a daily to-do list. To Miyasa, the whole concept had sounded completely wild and unhinged back then. Even when the priestess warned her it might genuinely hurt Miesa, just shrugged it off as another exhausting chore she had to survive, barely giving it a second thought. But reality was hitting different now. She knew this was her ultimate trump card to lock down this marriage. Honestly, if she had the choice, the clock was ticking, and this guy was still dragging his feet. Honestly, days had completely vanished since they last brought up the topic. With Eric dropping excuse after excuse, the king would literally end his life if they did not seal the deal soon. So why was she the only one stressing out over this? Or worse, what if he was stalling because he wanted to scrap their marriage completely? Earth to Miesa, Eric called out, catching her totally zoning out, but her mind was miles away, haunted by the headmaid's toxic trash talk. Did looking at her seriously make him sick? Was that his actual reason? Miesa, he snapped again, turning up the volume. She nervously chewed her bottom lip. She desperately needed to lock this marriage down. Hanging with the Claudine family felt like a safe haven, giving her major nostalgic vibes of the days she spent with her mom. Miesa Eric practically shook her by the shoulder, snapping her right back to reality. Are you okay? I have been calling your name on repeat. Dropping her eyes to the floor, she quietly echoed the maid's nasty remark. Honestly, I cannot even blame him. What guy would actually want to sleep with a total mess like me? Eric instantly froze, totally caught off guard. Wait, who told you that? His jaw visibly locked as the pieces clicked together. The headmaid. Suddenly, all her panicked energy made perfect sense. Sliding down next to her, his whole vibe shifted to something way softer. So, that is why you are rushing things. Look, like I told you before, we are practically total strangers. She shot him an absolutely bitter glare. Are we seriously doing this again? The whole let us get to know each other first routine? She mocked his previous excuse right back at him. Well then, maybe I could fix your little discomfort a whole lot faster. Her lips pushed out into an angry little pout. Eric just let out a low chuckle, clearly entertained. Wow, so you were actually paying that much attention to my little speech. And now, you want us to hit the sheets just because you listened to me talk for 5 seconds. Do you not think that is moving a little too fast even for us? He leaned in close, basically dripping with playful sarcasm. But before she could even fire back a response, he completely dodged her and turned away. Look, I seriously need more time to mentally prep for this whole union thing. It is not exactly something you just rush into. He dropped casually like they were discussing the weather. Miesa scowled hard. The maids literally gossiped that even random strangers could hook up with zero hesitation. So what on earth was this guy even yapping about? Fast forward to that night, they were both chilling on the bed in complete awkward silence. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife, and Miesa was definitely ready to get this marriage sealed. But Eric was firmly stepping on the brakes. How about we just swap life stories every single night? Instead, he threw out there. Do that and I swear I will finally cave to what you want. Let us kick things off on easy mode. What is your absolute favorite thing to eat? Meat, she deadpanned zero hesitation. Eric just laughed it off. Fair enough. He kept throwing random icebreakers her way, and she kept hitting him back with one-word answers. But after 20 minutes of this interrogation, her brain was practically frying. Okay, pause, Eric, that is enough, she snapped, totally losing her cool. He completely glitched out, his eyes blowing wide open. Wait, did you just sound exactly like my mom? He gasped, in pure shock. Boom. It hit him that she was flawlessly imitating Lady Claudine's bossy tone, and the dude completely lost it, cracking up like there was no tomorrow. Miesa was genuinely stunned. Seriously, this guy will literally laugh at anything she thought to herself. My bad, excuse me, Eric, finally managed to say, flashing a massive grin. But honestly, hearing you actually say my name was kind of top tier. Do it again. It did not feel nearly as weird this time, so she softly murmured Eric. He just stared right back at her, with this totally unreadable, intense look in his eyes. Breaking into the softest smile ever, he gently cupped her face in his hands. That sounded incredibly sweet, he whispered, radiating pure warmth. And since you actually humored my little request, it is only fair I pay you back. Slowly leaning in, he dropped the gentlest kiss right on her forehead. Miesa just blinked, completely stunned her fingers, tracing the lingering warmth on her skin. This was literally the first time anyone had ever given a single care about getting to know the real her. And she was spot on. Eric was heavily invested. He was fascinated by this princess who had been faking her whole crazy persona for years, and he desperately wanted to crack the code. And honestly, he was not just looking for surface-level trivia. The guy was obsessed with learning every single tiny detail about her. Come morning, Miesa's chaotic maids were right back at their daily snooping routine. And big surprise, the bed sheets were completely spotless, zero evidence that she and Eric had actually done the deed. The head maid practically shoved her face into Miesa's, trying to read her totally blank expression. For a split second, the maid swore the girl actually held eye contact with her, which was a massive red flag, since this supposedly insane princess never did that. But she quickly brushed it off as just her brain playing tricks on her. Dropping the suspicion, the maids flipped right back into their own private gossip session. They started whispering about pulling up to a specific family's estate the next day, and how they could totally milk the situation for their own benefit. A heavy dread immediately washed over Miesa. One of the servants literally shoved her down into a chair while they kept plotting, but Miesa's internal panic alarm was absolutely blaring. Her gut was screaming that this was a massive trap. If these gossips kept digging, her fake crazy cover was 100% going to get blown. She had to shut this down right now. With zero warning, Miesa threw her head back and let out this deeply unhinged supervillain-level cackle. She completely contorted her face into a freakish grin, howling with laughter like an absolute psycho. The maids swapped terrified looks, totally jump-scared by her sudden mental break. Then, before they could even blink, Miesa dashed straight out of the room like her life depended on it. The game plan was incredibly simple: go full goblin mode and cause absolute chaos. Second guessing was off the table. She sprinted down the halls until she hit an open balcony. Doing a quick sweep of the courtyard, she made sure there was a solid audience to watch her next stunt, then hoisted herself right up onto the edge of the dangerous stone railing. She literally threw herself out the window. In her head, those blooming petals down there were basically a giant bouncy castle. Cut to her bedroom. Misa's laid up in bed, totally wrecked from the drop. Meanwhile, Lady Claudine is absolutely ripping into the servants, spitting pure venom. The doors slam open. Eric storms in, catching the tail end of the chaos. "Spill it. Who let this happen?" he barks. The staff physically shrinks back, terrified into dead silence. Brushing past the trembling crowd, he beelines straight for Misa. He initially thought people were exaggerating, but seeing her curled-up skin ghost white and visibly scraped up, his eyes go ice cold. This whole situation just crossed a massive line. He immediately summons Jella, the estate's top-tier healer. Fix her up. Now he commands, dropping an aura that practically screams, "Don't test me." Spinning around to face the terrified staff, he drops the hammer. Going forward, only my family's personal crew gets within 10 feet of my wife. The servants instantly tense up, exchanging panicked glances. They want to object, but with his killing intent, not a single peep. Eric then locks eyes with his mom. Lady Claudine looks legitimately furious, like a fierce mama bear defending her own flesh and blood. He totally gets the psychology here. His mom is 100% projecting his deceased sister Rosie onto Misa. Back in the day, after a wasted swordsman took Rosie's life, Lady Claudine went scorched earth and wiped his entire bloodline off the map. That brutal revenge play caused a massive, unfixable rift between his parents. "Mom, listen," Eric treads carefully. "This is my partner we're talking about. I'm stepping up to handle her recovery personally." Before she can even clap back, Jella steps up with the medical diagnosis. "Nothing life-threatening, boss. She'll bounce back fast, and nothing's broken." Hearing that, the heavy tension instantly drains from Lady Claudine's shoulders. That was the exact update she needed. "Fine, you win." She finally concedes, the boss music fading from her voice. "You've got this under control." She drops a quick, soft kiss on Misa's forehead before sweeping out of the bedroom. The second the door clicks, Eric zeroes in on the medic. "Starting tomorrow, you're officially her private attendant." The healer's jaw practically hits the floor. Blinking away the shock, she quickly dips into a bow. "Understood." She slips out the door, leaving the married couple in dead silence. Eric slowly approaches the mattress. "Cut the act. I know you're conscious," he states, looming over the bed. "I'm guessing there's a method to this madness." "Wanna fill me in?" Misa gives a tiny shiver but stubbornly keeps her eyelids glued shut, committing to the fake sleep bit. Letting out a heavy sigh, he slumps onto the edge of the mattress. "Hey. You don't need to be scared of me. Just talk to me. What possessed you to pull that stunt today?" The room stays quiet for a beat before she mutters, "I had a plan. It's just super complicated." Closing the distance between them, his tone gets intensely serious. "Hear me loud and clear. Wreck whatever you want, but do not ever put yourself in danger again. Got it. Swear it to me right now." Shaken by how fiercely he's staring at her, she gives a hesitant nod, seeing that he finally lets out a breath he didn't know he was holding. "Perfect. Now about your new shadow. She isn't just carrying band-aids. She's a literal ninja who knows how to keep her mouth shut. Keep playing your usual role, but she's going to be your personal meat shield. Also, Colin, my main guy, right? I'm stationing him to lock down this whole upper level. He's solidly my most loyal dude." He hesitates for a second, lowering his voice. "I'm keeping your actual intelligence totally off the radar. But since you're benched, I'm burning some PTO to stay home until you're healed." Instantly, her eyes sparkle like crazy. Lighting up like it's Christmas morning, she shoots up from the pillows. "Wait, so we get to hang out, we can chat more. Can we start right now or like tomorrow?" She absolutely rapid fires at him. Eric just stares, totally glitching out. "What are you even babbling about? Did you forget you're literally covered in bruises?" He groans. She hits him with a massive pout, not getting why he's stressing. Her face morphs through like 10 different cute, confused emojis in record time, and Eric is hopelessly hypnotized by every single one of them. Snapping back to reality, he shakes it off. "Drop the subject until you're physically cleared," he scolds, forcefully averting his gaze. But it's totally useless. His eyes magnetically drift right back to her face. Giving up, he asks, "Why are you so hyped about this anyway?" She starts speaking, mindlessly parroting some spicy dialogue she eavesdropped on earlier. Eric's brow furrows the second it clicks. Those were his cousin Amberic's exact phrases. the exact garbage he spewed while trying to convince Eric to file for divorce. Okay, look at me. He grounds her firmly, holding onto her shoulders. I am absolutely not terminating this relationship. I literally keep zero secrets from you. You literally sit on my lap while I review highly classified intel. What makes you think I'm scheming behind your back? He softly guides her back against the headboard. Just chill out. If you're feeling sketched out, I'll have a servant camp out in here with you. You seriously need to stop crashing in the staff wing. It's not like I'm doing it for the vibes, she grumbles. It's where all the tea gets spilled. Eric gives her a massive side-eye caught completely off guard. I pulled the exact same move back at the royal estate, she brags, looking incredibly smug. That's literally how I found out Lady Malika was dropping bags of cash to pay off Nymeria, the head servant. She beams, flexing her elite spying skills. You're actually terrifyingly good at this. Eric admits, his mind totally blown. Every single weird, unhinged thing she did, it always traced back to some galaxy brain strategy. Honestly iconic. He crashed on the bed next to her, resting his chin in his palm just to lock eyes with her. Just wanted some up-close and personal time, he purred. Misa froze, but then her face lit up like a Christmas tree, totally convinced she had him wrapped around her finger. She figured the guy was finally caving. Huge plot twist. Instead of leaning in, he drops a massive bomb. Why exactly did Malika slip dirty money to Nymeria? Her whole vibe flatlined. She whipped her head away, rolling her eyes hard. Come on, talk to me, Eric murmured, his breath brushing her neck. How else are we gonna get close? Misa let out a heavy sigh before spitting out a glitchy sentence. Malika, meeting tomorrow. 3 pillars of kingdom. Eric's eyebrows knit together. The 3 pillars. Was she seriously talking about the top 3 ruling bloodlines? That made zero sense. The Solakis faction, the dead queen's family, was basically a ghost house at this point. Suddenly, a flashback hit him hard. He remembered Lucian Crispin grabbing his arm to shut him up right when that snake Malika was caught eavesdropping in the bushes. Boom! The secret link-up had to be with the Crispin family. Guess I'm putting a tail on both of them, he muttered, his tone turning ice-cold and focused. Misa gave him a hardcore side-eye. Why was he doing the absolute most? Honestly, if this dude wanted to throw his life away playing detective, that was his funeral, right? But while she was deep in thought about his weird energy, a sudden warm pressure pressed against her cheek. She jumped, turning halfway. Eric had actually closed the gap, planting a ridiculously soft kiss right on her skin. Just a little tip for the intel, he whispered, pulling away slowly. Misa reached up her fingertips, ghosting over the exact spot his lips just left burning. This guy was a total walking riddle. Fast forward to the next morning. Eric pushes the door open and walks right into a massive screaming match between Jella and the head maid. Are you seriously accusing me of trying to poison Claudine? Jella barked, her eyes blazing. How the hell am I supposed to know? Malika fired right back, glaring daggers at her. There's no way I'm letting that sketchy cream near her skin. Oh, Malika wanted war. Jella was fully ready to bring it. Without missing a single beat, she jammed her fingers straight into the jar, scooped out a massive glob of the ointment, and literally ate it right to their faces. Look at me, totally breathing, she yelled. The entire squad of rival maids looked like they just saw a ghost. Total silence. They were completely shut down. Lurking in the doorway, Eric just stood there, a wicked little smirk creeping onto his face. Drafting Jella for this mission was a massive win. He walked over, crouching down to slide a loose strand of hair behind Misa's ear. I'll slide back in before noon, he muttered, tracing his thumb along her jawline. Then he shot a freezing glare at the rest of the staff. Keep her safe till I'm back. Pivoting toward the exit, his playboy persona instantly evaporated the second he hit the hallway. His face went stone cold. He was racking his brain, trying to figure out why Misa kept self-sabotaging. But honestly, it was a low-key blessing in disguise. Her reckless stunts gave him the perfect excuse to plant Jella right in her inner circle. Now, if he wanted to keep her safe and crack her secrets, he had to blindside the king and smash his spy network. Phase 1, dump the night training garbage onto Mberic. His cousin was throwing a massive fit about it, but Eric couldn't care less. Needs must. Phase 2, deploy Cullen's shadow squad to track every single breath Malika and the Crispin crew took. The final move, calling in Edel Claudine's absolute day 1 ride or die. This woman had been guarding his mom since Eric was in diapers. She was lethal, loyal, and insanely smart. Just yesterday, she shadowed Malika into the royal court and dropped a flawless intel report on his desk. Thanks to your hustle, we're about to permanently cancel those 2 toxic maids, Eric told her, zero sarcasm in his voice. Edel gave a crisp bow, but Eric wasn't celebrating yet. Here's the catch. Kicking them out means absolutely nothing if they just get swapped for fresh spies. That's exactly where you come in. You're literally the only person built for this. He instantly spilled the tea on what he dug up, how Malika had pushed fat stacks of cash to Nymeria, the head honcho of the palace staff. His orders were strict. Dig into this on full stealth mode. Don't blow Misa's cover as the snitch, and absolutely do not stress out Claudine. Edel went silent, tapping her chin like a chess grandmaster. Going straight for Nymeria is practically impossible. But her top lackey, Viscountess Manel, she's drowning in drama with her brother-in-law. If we swoop in and fix her mess, we basically own her. Eric nodded, totally hyped about the play, and sent her off. Flash forward to later, when Eric finally pushed open Misa's door, like he promised. The vibe check completely threw him off. Misa was just sitting on the rug, sloppily throwing paint on a canvas, with Jella hovering over her like an art coach. What exactly is happening here? Eric blinked. Jella didn't even flinch. Since dragging Claudine outside is a red flag, I figured art therapy could chill her out. The girl's been through the ringer. Eric's intense stare instantly melted. She actually looked peaceful for once. He closed the distance, his hand reaching out to cradle her face. Maybe next round we hit her with some storybooks, he pitched smoothly. Jella nodded, totally catching the vision. Not a bad flex. I'll hunt down some fairy tales. But right as she glanced back up at her boss, she spotted him thumbing Misa's cheek like she was made of glass. Before Jella could even open her mouth to tease him, Eric snapped his head back, voice turning strict. You're off the clock. Dismissed. He gave the command. Giving a stiff bow, Jella dipped out, hiding a massive eye roll behind her, perfectly calm expression. Once she hit the hallway, she started venting. Are you kidding me? Playing doctor and maid at the exact same time? For a single paycheck, Colin, chilling against the wall, caught every word. Wait, nobody told you, he chimed in. They literally doubled your salary. Her jaw dropped to the floor, but before she could even celebrate the bag, the heavy wooden door flew open. Eric stepped out all business. Where did you stash the princess's outfits? He demanded. Bottom shelf, Jella blurted out. Appreciate it, he threw back, slamming the door shut in record time. Jella just stood there, totally stunned. The way the mighty captain looked at her lady, that definitely wasn't just a bodyguard doing his job. That was the intense, down-bad stare of a man completely obsessed with his wife. Hey, nothing wrong with a guy being head over heels for his own bride, Colin chuckled, catching her gossiping to herself. Guess you have a point, Jella finally sighed, letting out a little laugh. Still, she couldn't help but wonder, did her totally clueless mistress even realize the guy was swooning over her? Cut back to Eric. He was running the bath, testing the water like it was a science experiment. Suddenly, Miyasa spoke up from behind him. No baby books? He spun around, totally lost. Come again, no baby books. Need grown-up talking book. She demanded, struggling through the broken sentences. Eric let out a soft laugh, completely charmed. All right, I'll have Jella fetch one. Flashing a warm smile, he tilted his head toward the tub. Shall we get you washed up? But Miyasa instantly whipped around, facing the wall. Miyasa, what's wrong? He asked, completely caught off guard. So embarrassing, she mumbled into her hands. Eric makes it weird. Too awkward, super embarrassing. He blinked, totally clueless. Wait, I'm the one making things embarrassing. Yeah, Miyasa pouted, throwing him a glare. Eric's face turns into a tomato when I clean up. Puffing her cheeks out like an angry hamster, she snapped. I wash by myself. Eric, get out. He paused, his tone dropping to a soft, serious whisper. You are still hurt, you know. Just let me scrub your hair and I swear I'll bounce. After an agonizingly long stare down, she finally gave a grumpy little nod. Honestly, those harsh paint stains clinging to her skin would hurt way too much for her to scrub off alone. So, he took over massaging her scalp with crazy gentle precision. As the suds built up, his soothing voice echoed in the steamy bathroom. Try using your words instead of just pointing. Okay, the practice is good for you. The second he rinsed the last bubble, she shoved him away. Leave. Now. Eric just smirked at her fierce little scowl. Shout if you need backup, he teased, slipping out the door. Fast forward a bit, and Miyasa stormed out of the bathroom looking absolutely miserable. Turns out flying solo in the tub was a total disaster. So how did it go? Eric asked, leaning against the hallway wall. Jella scrubs me tomorrow? She shot back, her lips curled into a massive pout. Eric burst into laughter, completely losing it. Maybe try putting your nightgown on the right way first, he joked. She was literally wearing the whole thing backward. Later on, while he was carefully drying her hair and swapping out her old bandages, he asked in a crazy gentle voice, "How was your day anyway?" Jella is sweet, she replied without missing a beat. Are you feeling comfortable staying here? Yeah. I already gave the head chef the rundown on your favorite meals, Eric whispered, tucking a wet strand of hair behind her ear. But seriously, why were you starving before all this? Miyasa went dead silent. Then her voice hollow, she repeated the exact toxic words her old maids used to say. Why waste good food on a crazy princess? Eric's jaw instantly clenched. The horrific reality of her abuse was finally clicking. Those toxic snakes really made your life a living hell, didn't they? He growled. But before he could plot his revenge, Miyasa frantically grabbed his wrist. Panic flashed in her eyes. If you hurt them, bad things happen. No, she stammered out, terrified that him going rogue would put a massive target on his back with the king. Seeing her literally shaking, Eric dropped the dark aura and quickly pivoted. Looks like your vocabulary is leveling up, he praised softly. Yeah, but yesterday's practice got cancelled, Miyasa confessed. Oh, and whose fault was that? She shot him a dirty look. I practice in the dark, but last night when I tried sneaking out, Eric, she mimed a heavy body, crushing her, squashed me, pinned me down, ruined my practice. Eric's eyes went wide. Blushing hard, he nervously rubbed the back of his neck. Guess my instincts knew you were making a run for it, he mumbled, super embarrassed. I used my words just now. Right here, Miyasa demanded, aggressively tapping her own forehead. She leaned all the way in, demanding her prize. Chuckling under his breath, Eric cupped her cheeks and planted the sweetest kiss right on her brow. What is this, a black market deal, he joked. Always making me pay the toll for every little sentence. From that moment on, Miyasa's inner chatterbox totally unlocked. Day by day, her vocabulary skyrocketed, and she started hitting him with endless questions. Half the time they were random, purely innocent thoughts. The rest of the time, she dropped absolute curveballs that left Eric totally scrambling for a good answer. But every late-night chat was basically pulling them closer together. Those choppy, broken sentences faded away, replaced by super smooth, confident conversation. Honestly, the words were always up here. I just needed to unlock the verbal part, Miyasa declared, looking absolutely fierce and unstoppable. And since I answered your question, pay up, kiss me. Not complaining at all, Eric grabbed her face and sealed the deal right on her lips. Pulling back slightly, he dropped a new idea. Since you're talking like a pro now, maybe we should use proper titles. We are officially married, you know? Miyasa just stared at him like he had 3 heads. I'm literally royal blood, and you're just Claudine's kid. Why on earth would I call you sir? Eric cracked up at her pure, clueless expression before breaking it down for her. Since we tied the knot, you are officially running with the high society crowd now too. Those words literally made her eyes light up like fireworks, and honestly, Eric was instantly hooked, totally mesmerized by that unfiltered glow. Bummed out about it, my lady, he teased, catching her hand to press a super soft kiss against her knuckles. Miyasa just beamed. Nope. I actually vibe with living here, so it is whatever to me. Love hearing that, Eric whispered, his thumb lightly tracing the curve of her cheek. You are honestly pretty sweet. Kind of glad I ended up saving your life, she mumbled softly. Eric blinked, totally thrown off. Hold up, what do you mean you saved my life? Hello. The whole king accusing you of treason drama, she pointed out like it was obvious. Eric just stared at her, totally speechless. Because real talk, if he had not married her, he literally never would have been on the chopping block to begin with. But catching sight of her stunning face, those flushed cheeks, and that crazy innocent smile, he had absolutely zero regrets. Fair enough, I totally owe you one, he finally gave in. Miyasa let out this cute, bubbly giggle. Eric. I am genuinely so happy we got married. Her smile was giving major kid in a candy store energy, just pure and unfiltered, catching all those raw feelings right there on her face. Something deep inside Eric seriously shifted. Miyasa, he breathed out, sliding his fingers right between hers to lock their hands together. You might want to close your eyes. He closed the gap between them, his thumb lightly grazing her bottom lip. Her whole face instantly burned beet red at the totally new vibe. Come on, just shut them for a second, Miyasa. Seriously, do not stress, he coaxed, his voice smooth as velvet, buying into his calm energy. She let her eyelids flutter shut. Eric swept right in, claiming her lips and totally turning up the heat as he dragged her flush against him. His heart was practically hammering out of his chest now, but Miyasa suddenly popped her eyes open, looking low-key panicked. Why is he literally snacking on my mouth like there are crumbs left over? Like there is zero food there. Her brain was totally short-circuiting. By the time Eric finally broke the kiss, they were both gasping for air. She looked way more traumatized than turned on. Eric just planted a soft kiss on her forehead, dragged his lips down her cheek, and totally went back in for round 2 on her mouth. Feeling a little weird for you, he mumbled against her lips. But way before she could even form a thought, his mouth was already traveling south, latching onto the sweet spot on her neck, sucking lightly while the heat between them spiked. A tiny, totally accidental whimper slipped right out of Miyasa. But reality slapped her back awake, and she instantly shoved his face away. Hold up, time out, this is not how it works. You are doing it totally wrong. Like, have you seriously never done this before? She demanded, completely flustered but dead serious. The upper half of the body is literally irrelevant right now. I am an expert on this. The priest gave me the whole rundown, so just follow my lead, she bossed him. But Eric just pinned her hands down and silenced her with another deep kiss. This is 100% required for that lower half stuff you just mentioned. It is basically prep work, so the whole ordeal hurts you way less. He broke it down, keeping his tone completely low and rock steady. Miyasa scrunched up her face. No way, whoever taught you was totally capping. Look, if you keep interrupting my flow, we are literally never going to reach the finish line. Eric shot back, diving right back into her neck. Plus, reality check. This is the only playbook I have got. She shoved his face back again, straight up annoyed now. Why are you being so difficult right now? I am literally just trying to save your life here. He froze his breath hot against her ear. Wait, you are doing all this stuff just for my sake, he murmured. Miyasa totally stiffened up, but she absolutely did not deny it. Eric's hot breath sent shivers right down her spine as he rasped out. I am genuinely touched, my lady. Which means I am definitely taking my sweet time down here. Because hurting a wife who is obsessing over my survival is the last thing I want to do. Miyasa was internally screaming right about now, fully convinced this dude had totally lost the plot. "Why are you literally allergic to listening to me?" she groaned out, completely done with him. Eric just flashed this devilish half-smirk. "Funny, that is exactly my vibe half the time too. So quit stalling and let's get moving, my lady." He closed the distance completely, taking over again. Cut to the next morning. Miyasa's maids popped in for their usual morning routine, but today, they looked totally tripped out. "Honestly, I cannot even tell what is going on," one of them gossiped softly. "Literally same," the other whispered back, squinting. Over on the bed, Miyasa just let out a massive yawn, flawlessly putting on her whole crazy princess act. But on the inside, that absolute clown spent the entire night doing literally nothing but wasting my time. "Just making out with me," she grumbled internally. While the maids kept chattering, one leaned in extra close. Maybe getting a side piece completely rewired his brain. "Shut up," the head maid snapped aggressively, elbowing her. Then, dropping her volume to a total stealth whisper, she went, "Dude, look, the side chick just walked in." They practically glared over at Gela, who was just stepping through the door. "My lady, I picked out your fit for today," Gela announced, totally cheerful. But the exact second she clocked Miyasa's neck, she completely blue-screened. "Wait, why are you covered in this massive rash? You were flawless yesterday." She leaned in, trying to diagnose the spots, and then the mental math finally clicked. Her entire face went tomato red from the sheer, unadulterated shock and secondhand embarrassment. Meanwhile, cut to Edel giving Eric the daily debrief. "Looks like swapping out the princess's personal staff is going to be a massive roadblock right now," she reported straight up, Eric's brow totally furrowed. "What gives? Why is the royal court still stonewalling the staff swap?" Edel did not even blink as she broke down the tea. Lady Malika basically treats her employer's vault like a personal ATM. When someone finally busted her, she just threw crazy cash at the head maid to lock down her job. Teaming up with Viscountess Manel, I managed to pull the actual receipts on all the boosted loot and the hush money. She slid a massive dossier across the desk. Eric skimmed the damage, giving a sharp, approving nod. "Solid hustle." But Edel low-key paused. "Young boss, talk to me," Eric replied. "Maybe you should actually..." She totally slammed the brakes on her sentence, intensely filtering whatever she was about to drop. Flash over to the garden. Miyasa was just mindlessly chilling with Gela, but Gela was still visibly traumatized from the bedroom scene. "Did the captain literally suffer a mental break?" she mumbled under her breath, totally shook. Then, dropping into a deep squat right next to Miyasa, she went full stealth mode to whisper, "Listen, if that guy tries anything sketchy, you claw his eyes out. Swear it." Misa just squirmed completely out of her element. Gela was totally misreading the vibe. "Look, I get that you guys tied the knot, and nobody in this house is gonna step in to save you." The maid's tone dropped heavy with absolute heartbreak. "Honestly, I always thought my baby sister had it worst. Now, I'm second-guessing that." Misa cocked her head. The maid was about to drop some serious unreleased family trauma. She caught the plague way back, pushed through it, but she wound up just like you. "We were crazy broke. Zero cash for meds. Zero time for a sickly kid. Then this one afternoon my dad walked her out the front door. He walked back in, solo." A jagged sob ripped through Gela's throat. "Took me years to clock that he dumped her somewhere she'd never escape." Misa soaked it all in. Huge reality check dropping right here, so parents could actually just toss their kids away like trash. Gela forced a brittle, watery smile. "Thanks for listening. Never breathed a word of that to a single soul." She paused, chewing her lip. "Actually, Lady Claudine, the literal second I laid eyes on you." Boom! Cut off. "Found you, my lady." Eric's smooth baritone sliced through the air as he swaggered over. His fingers brushed a stray lock behind her ear. Pure, effortless intimacy. "I've got her from here." Dismissed. Gela froze visibly, hating the command, but dipped into a stiff bow and dipped out. Misa was ready to throw hands, though. She desperately needed the end of that sentence. "You didn't need to crash this, Eric," she muttered, dodging his intense gaze. The guy actually looked shook. "Wait, what? Am I killing the vibe?" Misa gave a slow head shake. "It's not that deep. It's just, you walk in and the whole room goes dead silent. With Gela, I actually get the tea. She actually teaches me how the real world works." "Ah, got it." The icy duke practically melted a flash of genuine hurt crossing his features. "Makes sense." Misa hit him with a baffled stare. Why is he suddenly brooding? But the gloom vanished behind a soft smirk. "Your color is coming back. Love that for you." His thumb traced her cheekbone. Misa just blinked. "The dude literally tracks my health better than I do." Honestly, the guy was a massive puzzle, but hanging with him gave her instant dopamine. She kind of prayed he'd stay exactly like this. In her head, he was basically stepping right out of those vintage bedtime storybooks. A sovereign who ruled with zero toxicity and pure wisdom. "Ready to head back in, my lady?" He finally stood up, offering his hand. Fast forward to midnight. The bedroom tension turned lethal as Eric's lips skimmed her collarbone, his voice dropping an octave. "Don't stop talking now," he purred, locking her flush against his chest while she straddled his lap. "Spill it. What else do I do that gets you going?" The whisper sent full-body shivers down Misa's spine. Why does this man keep playing these pointless mind games? Can we just skip to the main event? Her lungs were working overtime. Every time he sparked this kind of physical contact, her oxygen supply just vanished. I'm a fan of you carrying me, she finally cracked. Eric's eyes darkened, refusing to let her off the hook. Give me the why. Why, that Misa scowled. Isn't it painfully obvious? We're literally only doing the deed to survive this death trap. Why the interrogation? Then he hit the brakes and pulled back. Her stomach completely dropped. No rush, he coaxed, maddeningly patient. I've got all night. Misa was absolutely floored. He's literally weaponizing intimacy until I confess. That is so toxic. Never in her life had she dealt with someone this diabolical. Jaw locked, she surrendered the ugly truth. My leg is messed up. I limp. Walking is a massive hassle, all right. Being carried is just easier. Right on cue, a smug, satisfied grin spread across Eric's face. Misa's brain was short-circuiting. Why is he dragging this out when we could literally just get down to business? Wait. Unless the maid was right. Did his feelings completely flip? Is there a side piece? The thought hit her like a truck, and she yanked fistfuls of his shirt. Her eyes blew wide, frantically searching his expression. We're a thing, right? Like a real thing. Like two people who actually mean something to each other. That's us, yeah. Panic leaked into her voice as she double-downed on the question. Eric froze entirely. Then that lethal gaze melted. We aren't just a thing, he stated, his tone unshakable. We are married. A massive spike of anxiety hit her. Okay, but are you wifed up with me but creeping around with someone else? Her face was completely rigid with stress. Instantly, Eric's demeanor went ice cold. What garbage did that maid feed you today? Misa dodged eye contact, basically screaming guilty, without saying a single word. Sure, those trash dynamics exist. He confessed, his voice dropping low. But that is not how I operate. You are my only endgame. And I'm yours. He didn't just say it, he swore it. Growing up watching his own dad shatter their family made Eric physically allergic to cheating. He yanked her flush against his chest, totally consumed by the paranoid fear that she might actually bolt. His thumb grazed her bottom lip, his eyes scanning every inch of her face. Seriously though, are you starting to talk exactly like Gela? He caught that subtle Kassan tilt in her voice and called it out. Misa just gave this tight, anxious little nod. Wait, does it sound weird? She fretted. But Eric's face just melted into this ridiculously gentle smirk. Nah, it's actually really cute. Without missing a beat, he leaned in and planted this super soft melting kiss right on her lips. Misa's brain absolutely short-circuited. Hold up, we were just supposed to do the bare minimum for an heir. That was the deal. All this extra romantic stuff, the gentle kisses, literally 0% of that was in the rulebook. The priestess shoved down my throat. But even though she knew this was totally off script, these sweet little gestures were completely wrecking her walls. She was catching actual feelings, and the whole vibe left her shivering and completely out of her depth. Fast forward to the morning, and the maids rolled out an absolute masterpiece for Misa, a buttery cream gown dripping with lace ribbons and a flawless matching bib. Our princess looked like a literal angel, and her squad of maids were losing their minds over it. Oh my god, your highness, you are literally glowing. One girl practically bounced off the walls, clapping like a proud mom. Misa just stood there blinking awkwardly, buffering through the compliments. But lurking over in the corner, Adele, looking like she just chewed on a lemon. Just hours ago, she was totally losing it in Eric's office. I refuse to watch you drag this family into the mud, she had snapped at him. You seriously need to bring in a concubine. Eric didn't even flinch. He just slowly looked up from his paperwork, his voice dangerously icy. Oh, so your die-hard loyalty to the Claudine name means you're ordering me to sleep with someone else. Adele's jaw practically locked. I just hate watching you dodge your actual responsibilities. You're dumping all the heavy lifting on Ambrick just to babysit a girl who barely talks. You're wasting your time firing maids and obsessing over her little garden strolls. Make it make sense. Eric casually pivoted to Cullen standing nearby. Tell me, Cullen, am I slacking off? Literally never. Boss Cullen fired back instantly. Ever since you totally nuked the food crisis. By strong-arming Marquess Hetab at the table, the public is completely backing our family again. Plus, with Ambrick running the night drills, the troops know exactly who holds the power. Adele's face went completely flat. Knowing she just got utterly owned, she gave a rigid, furious bow. My bad for stepping out of line, my lord, and she stormed out. But she was fuming. In her head, literally everyone, Eric, Lady, Claudine, and even the elite guard, were under some crazy spell cast by this lunatic princess. It made zero sense to her. You can't let a total wild card run an empire. She raged internally. Somebody needs to pull the plug on this circus before we're doomed. Cut to dinner that night. Misa randomly peeked up from her food, her eyes literally sparkling with hype. I really want to see the outside, she whispered. Like the stuff in the books, the busy streets, the crowds. I want to go so bad. She sounded so pure, so genuinely hyped, that Eric was instantly defeated. Say less. We ride out tomorrow, he promised, with this massive soft spot showing. But his mom was totally not vibing with it. She's literally never stepped foot off the estate. The city is way too chaotic. You are taking Jella for security. End of story. Eric tried to play it cool. Chill, Mom. She'll be glued to my side. But Lady Claudine wasn't having it. Bring the chaperone. Left with zero options, he caved. Fast forward to their luxury carriage gliding over the Conscian capital's pavement. Almost immediately, Eric hit Jella with the coldest dismissal. Link back up with us in 3 hours. Go touch grass or something until then. Jella low-key panicked. Sir, you want me to just ditch her? I'm her security detail today. He cut her off. Trust me. Looking massively stressed, Jella bowed out and took off. The second she vanished into the mob, the wheels started turning again. Eric leaned over to Misa, who was totally faking a nap, while using his lap as a pillow, and murmured right against her ear, "Coast is clear, faker." Her eyes snapped open, and she instantly glued her face to the glass, basically starstruck by the view. The capital's insane energy was on full display. Merchants screaming out deals, kids playing tag through the alleys, locals aggressively haggling at shops, and the insane smell of fresh pastries everywhere. Eric just sat back and watched her, a total simp smile creeping onto his face. Seeing her this hyped, he refused to ruin the moment. Just this once, he wanted her to soak in the raw, unfiltered reality outside their gilded cage. Then Misa aggressively pointed at the street. "Yo, what is that?" she asked, completely locked onto this row of busted-looking wooden vendor carts. Eric tracked her finger. Street stalls he dropped casually. Merchants push products there, but it's usually bottom-tier junk. Misa hit him with a massive head tilt, looking deeply concerned. "Wait, if the mighty Claudine family calls it trash," she deadpanned, "is it even usable?" Eric totally blanked for a second. Then it hit him like a truck. Oh my god, her math was entirely wrong. She actually thinks we're broke. Flashback to all those times she chilled on his lap while he crunched the estate's budget. She totally peeked at the red ink, and somehow jumped to the conclusion that his empire was filing for bankruptcy. Fighting for his life not to laugh, he leaned in. "Misa, he cooed that little deficit you spied. Total glitch. It only tanked because the war wrapped up, and we had to feed 17,000 troops dropping back into town. It just squeezed our grocery budget for a minute. But honestly, the crisis was already handled." Her eyes went wide, totally locked onto his every word, as he, completely oblivious to his own flex, started casually dropping his stats. "The Cladani territory is absolutely thriving," he boasted, puffing out his chest. "We are talking 3 massive iron mines and a chokehold on the southern trade routes. You literally have 0 reasons to stress." It took him a solid second to realize he sounded like a total tryhard. He cleared his throat suddenly, super awkward. "Did I upset you?" Misa just shook her head. "Not at all," she murmured. "I was honestly just thinking about how I used to ration my snacks. Convinced we were entirely broke, kind of regretting not clearing my plate now." Eric completely froze. Wait, that was what kept her up at night. And he had 0 clue. Right as their carriage cruised past a high-end dessert shop, he slammed his hand against the wall, signaling the driver to halt. "Do not move," he ordered, pushing the door open. "Keep this locked until I get back." He practically vaulted out before she could even process it. Left alone in the quiet cabin, Misa just sat there. A hot rush of embarrassment flooded her cheeks over her whole fake broke misunderstanding. Flashes of her past hit her. The tiny, isolated Celia Palace, the only real sanctuary she had before getting forcefully dragged into the snake pit of the royal palace. Back then, her royal title was her only shield, a desperate flex because she literally had nothing else. But stepping out of those toxic walls, that was her first actual taste of peace. She was absolutely convinced this marriage, the one she assumed would be her villain origin story, would somehow give her a chance to finally breathe, staring blankly out the glass. A clique of noble ladies snatched her attention. They were aggressively whispering behind their fancy fans, totally failing to hide their giggles. Oh my god, as that Lord Cladani one practically drooled. The Western Front hero is literally so gorgeous. Seriously, another whined. Such a massive waist that he is chained down to that absolute psycho of a princess. Those words hit Misa like a literal freight train. Looking through the window, she watched Eric step out of the bakery carrying a pastel box. Every single girl out there was tracking his movements, throwing him a mix of hardcore thirst and tragic pity. Misa knew that exact look. It was the same sympathetic stare Ambrit gave him, the same side-eye from the maids, everyone acting like Eric caught a bad break by ending up with her. The gossip instantly flatlined the second Eric walked back. He hopped back into the carriage, completely unbothered, his face totally relaxed. "Sorry to keep you hanging," he said, casually resting the dessert box on his knees. Misa stared at the floor, gripping the fabric of her dress until her knuckles went white. It finally clicked. The marriage that gave her a safe haven was absolutely ruining his rep. The whole world painted him as a tragic victim, and she was the villain dragging him down. Then, a deeply messed up, isolating thought invaded her brain. If the whole universe is busy pitying him who is supposed to care about me, I snagged the most hyped treats in the entire South. Eric announced, hyping up the moment as he popped the lid. The guy behind the counter swore these Hallett tarts are top tier. Misa instantly snapped her head away. "Stop," she blurted out. "Close the box, I hate sugary stuff." The words cut through the air way harsher than she meant them to. She was spiraling without a clue why. Was she mad at herself, the mean girls, or just furious that his raw kindness made her feel incredibly pathetic? Eric just blinked, freezing, mid-action. "Did something happen while I was out?" he asked, his voice steady. Misa kept her back to him, radiating ice. "I literally just said I hate sweets." Eric let out a soft breath, and then without hesitation, his fingers gently tilted her chin, forcing her to actually look at him. "Misa," he murmured, "I could not care less about the pastries. I care about what is messing with your head right now." The whole vibe shifted the second I left. "Look, we are newlyweds, but I am not blind to when you are hurting. No yelling, no demands, just pure unfiltered patience." Misa was utterly shell-shocked, just staring at him. Any other guy would have ghosted the conversation or called her crazy, but he was actively trying to decode her trauma, and honestly, that only made her heart shatter worse. Before she even knew what was happening, she buried her face right into his lap. Eric stayed totally quiet. He just let her hide there, a solid, comforting anchor. But as the seconds ticked by, the cringe started hitting Misa hard. What is actually wrong with me? The thought looped in her brain, making her want to melt into the floorboards. Sure, they were trauma-bonded in this survival game, but this dude clearly held all the cards. He held her darkest secret, and she literally needed his backing to stay breathing. Yet here she was, throwing a literal tantrum. Maybe getting treated like an actual human being for once made me soft, she realized with a bitter mental laugh. It was messing with her defense mechanisms. Regardless, she gave herself a harsh reality check. She had to keep him in her corner, no matter the cost. By the time they hit the rendezvous spot, Jellery hopped in to join the ride. But the second she stepped inside, the tension was incredibly thick. She nervously peeked at both of them, catching an instant bad vibe. Total suffocating silence. As the heavy gates of the palace loomed closer, Eric locked eyes on a carriage rolling out, his toxic dad, judging by the route. It did not take a genius to figure out the old man was heading straight to his side piece again. Edel's brutal call-out replayed in his head. "You dropped the ball on your responsibilities." Honestly, she was spitting facts. He had turned a blind eye to his dad's messy cheating scandal for way too long. A single drop of corruption can poison a whole bloodline if ignored. The carriage grinds to a halt. Young Master Jella calls out, breaking the heavy silence. "Got a box left inside, want me to bring it?" Eric scoops Misa up into his arms, his vibe completely detached. "Nah, keep it." He mutters, his voice ice cold, but then he stops dead in his tracks. "By the way, Jella, you know your way around a dagger?" Right, Jella blinks, totally caught off guard. Her brain screams at her to play dumb. But lying to this guy, literal death wish. She gives a slow, hesitant nod. Perfect. He drops the single word and pivots, carrying Misa toward the massive estate. Jella just stands there processing the weird flex. Finally, she shrugs it off, grabs the stash of sweets from the carriage and dips. Cut to the balcony up top where Misa's maids are heavily side-eyeing the whole situation. "He is literally obsessed with his girl," one whispers. "Weird flex for a guy with his status," the other sneers, voice dripping with judgment. "Hey, if she keeps him entertained, who cares?" Fast forward to the bedroom. Eric gently sets Misa down on the mattress like she is made of glass. He takes a seat, just waiting for her to drop a word. But nothing. Total radio silence. Her gaze glued to the wall. Giving in, he lets out a breath and reaches over, softly stroking her hair. "Get some rest. I will wake you when dinner is served," he murmurs, pushing himself up to leave. Boom! She snatches his wrist. "Eric, are you mad at me?" He glances back, genuinely lost. Now Misa knows this guy lives for it when she actually opens up. So after a tense pause, she drops her voice, picking her words like walking through a minefield. "Those treats you bought, they are from Hallie Eddy. That is my mom's homeland. I hate it." Eric straight up freezes. He had absolutely zero clue. "Got it," he whispers. Context time. Misa's mom was the third and final queen of the Old King, originally coming from a total nobody noble family. When the Old King passed away, she gave birth to Misa and got instantly thrown away, exiled to the dusty little Celia Palace. Completely ghosted by the world. And it gets worse. When Barmel took the crown, he absolutely wiped her mom's family off the map. After that, the queen's name was totally scrubbed from history. Barely anyone even remembers she existed. "My bad." Eric finally breaks the silence. "Do you just hate everything from that place?" "Yeah, Misa," replies, her voice quiet but dead serious. He exhales heavily. "Look, this is exactly why I am always asking about you," he explains softly. "If I actually know you, I will not mess up like I did today." Her grip on his hand does not loosen. "I get it," she mumbles. He scans her face, reading her expression, before pressing further. "But there is something else, right? Something else triggered you earlier." Misa instantly averts her eyes. "I already told you." Everything she fires back defensively. "That is it." Eric's brow furrows. "Misa." But before he can even finish, she squeezes her eyes shut, pulling the fake sleep card. He groans internally, spotting the dodge from a mile away. Faking it again, he mutters under his breath. He leans down and gives her nose a playful pinch, but she goes full statue mode. Slumping back into his chair, he lets out a massive sigh. He knew she would not magically open up overnight, but man, it still ate at him. Her whole avoidance tactic. The way she just buried her trauma like it was nothing. It genuinely terrified him. He had watched hardcore soldiers completely lose their grip on reality after battle. Dudes who were cracking jokes one day and completely shattered the next. Lately, Misa had been acting so chill and unfazed that Eric almost forgot how incredibly messed up her backstory was. And his biggest fear, that one day all that repressed agony was going to blow up into a disaster they could not fix. Fast forward a few days. The vibe is cozy. Eric is gently pulling the blankets up, tucking Misa in for the night, while she casually drops her dinner review. "The soup hit different today," she whispers, "and the bread was not like a literal brick." Eric nods, a tiny smile creeping up. "I will let the chefs know." But when he glances back down, he just freezes. Misa is staring a hole through him, eyes wide, clearly waiting for her tax, chuckling at the sheer cuteness of it. He leans in and drops a soft kiss on her forehead. The second he pulls back, she hits him with more trivia. "Oh, and the sun was way too aggressive today, so I could not chill outside. But I actually love it when the weather is nice enough to go out." Eric lets out a low, breathy laugh, diving back in. "Is that so?" He hums, pressing another sweet kiss against her cheek. But even in this wholesome moment, a weird, suffocating weight drops into his chest, an emotion he cannot quite put his finger on. "Are we done here?" Misa asks, staring up at him, clearly waiting for the main event. "Well, that depends," Eric counters, locking eyes with her. "Do you have anything real to share? Because everything you just said, you could drop that small talk on a total stranger." Misa instantly pouts, heavily annoyed by the pressure. Eric immediately breaks eye contact, dodging her stare. This entire storm of emotions inside him, affection, heavy guilt, raw longing, it all felt way too chaotic to handle, forcing him to emotionally backpedal without even meaning to. After a beat of silence, Misa turns to him, her vibe shifting. "I literally do not know the difference between talking to a stranger versus someone close to me," she confesses. "Before you, I never really had a single person to talk to." Eric lets out a massive breath, dragging a hand down his face. "I get it," he whispers, absolutely hating himself for pushing her, because right there beside him, she was faintly shaking, drowning in this silent, crushing anxiety. And all this guy could do was lay there like a coward, swallowing his own feelings and forcing his heart to stay quiet. Guilt washed over him, making him pivot back to her. "Maybe we can finally unpack what happened that day," he coaxed. "There's more to the story." "Isn't there?" She completely clammed up, prompting him to lower his voice. "Look, I get that opening up is brutal, and you're used to burying this deep. But honestly, Misa, the fact that your walls drop around me is a massive green flag." Misa just stared, letting the silence stretch before dropping a barely audible, "Why are you even treating me like this?" Her voice was barely a whisper, but the pure bewilderment was loud and clear. "It literally makes zero sense why you're being this gentle." The question totally caught Eric off guard. He swallowed hard, breaking eye contact. "You're a Claudine now," he finally breathed out. "We're family." Misa's eyes instantly shot wide open. Family. That word felt entirely alien, a totally foreign concept she had completely scrubbed from her memory. "And since we are family," Eric murmured, leaning in, "you can drop the mask around me. Spill whatever is on your mind. Just lock in on 2 promises, stay fiercely loyal, and never forget we're playing for the exact same team." Obviously, Misa fired back, nodding without missing a single beat. But Eric instantly clocked the disconnect. In her head, she was just agreeing to basic survival tactics, keeping each other breathing. For him, the stakes were way higher. He craved absolute trust, ultimate loyalty, a genuine bond he prayed would actually materialize. "All right," he whispered, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. "We're definitely on different pages right now, but maybe our vibes will sync up eventually." He smoothly reeled her into a warm embrace, dropping a ridiculously tender kiss right on her forehead. It worked like absolute magic. Within seconds, Misa's breathing evened out as she completely passed out. Honestly, it felt like an eternity since he'd wrapped her up like this. Even dead to the world in his arms, her subconscious totally picked up on the fact that this guy was desperately trying to broadcast a feeling she couldn't quite decode yet. Back in the day, she fully assumed Eric's whole nice guy routine was totally staged. But now it was clicking. He was genuinely just a massive softie at his core. Flash forward to the next morning, and Eric is literally scooping Misa up like a princess again, gearing up for another massive day out. "Have the absolute best time today," sweet Misa Lady Claudine practically beamed. She was giving major, mother figure energy right then. But lurking right behind her was Adele, completely muted with a total poker face. The second those carriage wheels started spinning, Adele finally snapped. She kept her tone professional, but you could totally hear the sheer saltiness bleeding through. "Madam, are we totally sure about this setup?" she pressed, treading super carefully. "The young heir is fully a grown man. Letting a girl that young..." Just hang out alone with him. 24/7, Lady Claudine didn't even let her finish pivoting with a totally dismissive scoff. Oh, please, Adele, she sighed, shaking her head while flashing a knowing smirk. Are you absolutely blind to their dynamic? There is literally zero scandalous stuff happening there. Plus, why on earth would Eric's head ever get turned by some random girl when he literally wifed up someone as top tier as Misa? She sounded so wildly confident, flexing her pride hard. Misa is glowing right now, she gushed. She definitely needs to put on a few more pounds, though. I'm totally making the head butler whip up an insane feast for her, packed with all her absolute cravings. Dropping that, Lady Claudine spun on her heels and strutted right back into the mansion. Adele just froze in place. Her fake nice facade instantly shattered, completely giving way to pure, unfiltered rage. Her brain just couldn't process the math. Why was the entire household acting like extreme simps for this random girl? What kind of insane brainwashing did she pull? Cut to midnight, Eric is flying solo in his dark office. A massive intel drop sat dead center on his mahogany desk. Misa's personal maid, Malika, hit up a sketchy pawn shop earlier today. That basically screamed one massive red flag. The opposition was officially making their play. Meanwhile, it was total radio silence from the Crispin family. Slumping back into his leather seat, completely zoning out, Eric suddenly caught a flicker of motion out of his peripheral vision. Boom! Misa was just hovering by the doorframe like a ghost, the dim lantern catching the stark paleness of her face. "Misa," he blurted, genuinely startled. Insomnia hitting hard, he smoothly patted his own lap. "Wanna come crash right here for old time's sake?" Misa aggressively shook her head. "Nah, I actually need to drop a truth bomb." She sounded intensely serious, majorly out of character for her. "I've been marinating on this heavily," she pushed on, "and I finally decided I actually don't hate your guts anymore." Eric's brain literally blue-screened. He just stared. "Wait, you actually hated me?" he stammered out, thoroughly, mind blown. "Past tense, yeah." Misa deadpanned. Eric instantly pushed off his chair, closing the distance between them with slow, measured steps. "So you literally just woke up and decided I'm not the villain?" He probed intensely, scanning her face for any tells. Misa visibly shrank back, totally misreading his vibe. "Are you mad?" "God no, Misa." He breathed out gently, swiping a thumb across her cheekbone to ground her. "But realistically, what made you hate my guts right out of the gate? Was it the physical contact? Did me touching you completely cross a boundary?" "Not at all," Misa shot back instantly. Eric exhaled, a massive breath he didn't even realize he was holding. "It doesn't creep me out," she clarified after a tiny pause. "It's just totally useless." Eric let out a low, raspy laugh. "Gotcha. Well, I count it as a massive win that I'm officially out of your creep zone." "Hold up, Eric." Misa suddenly pivoted, scanning his cluttered workspace. "What exactly are you plotting over here?" "Literally just grinding through some boring paperwork," he answered, keeping his eyes locked on her. As she did this adorable little head tilt and closed the gap. "Can I peek at those?" she asked. "Knock yourself out," Eric offered, stepping fully out of her way. "Just try not to shred them into confetti." "I'm way past my destructive phase," Misa stated with zero irony, completely hunching over the desk to scan the pages. To his absolute shock, she was tearing through the paragraphs like a speed reader, her eyes darting flawlessly across the intense jargon. Girl had clearly spent way more of her life devouring books than actually talking to people. "Wait, Eric, so this whole time I figured you had someone shadowing my maid Misa?" Dropped the question without even lifting her eyes from the paperwork. "Guilty as charged," he smoothly replied. Flipping a page, she didn't miss a beat. "And the Selakizi clan, aren't they practically a ghost house at this point?" Eric leaned back, getting comfortable. "Pretty much. Rumor has it a bastard heir just surfaced. If that checks out, that dead bloodline might actually make a comeback." Misa deliberately wrapped up her reading before finally locking eyes with him. "All right, I'm caught up on the intel. You still grinding through that stack?" Eric glanced at his desk. "Looks like it," he muttered, eyeing the endless paperwork. Then Misa completely shifted the vibe. Her voice dropped quiet but dead serious. "I want to sit on your lap." Eric literally short-circuited for a second. Go for it," he managed to say. Zero hesitation. Misa casually hoisted herself up and perched on his thigh, keeping her usual perfect posture like it was no big deal. Then she hit him with a total curveball. Tilting her head, she dropped this gem. "By the way, Eric is kissing strictly a bedroom activity." The dude completely froze. "Come again." Playing the innocent card, she just kept going. "I realized I don't just tolerate you anymore. I actually think I'm catching feelings. So, can we start?" But before she could finish that wild confession, Eric hooked a finger under her chin, forcing her to look up. The playful energy vanished. His voice dropped into dangerous territory. "All right, Misa, what's the actual play here?" he interrogated. "Because honestly, your acting skills need some serious work." He closed the gap between them, trapping her by sliding his arm behind her head, making her lean back into his chest. "Spill it," he whispered. "Why the sudden bold move tonight?" "Hey, I delivered high-level intel," Misa shot back, totally defensive. "I'm just cashing in on my usual reward." Eric's eyebrows knit together. Her logic was absolutely unhinged, but technically she wasn't wrong. "Fair enough." He dragged out the words, a smirk, finally breaking through his serious facade. I guess you did earn a payout. Moving his grip to the nape of her neck, he leaned in and completely stole her breath with a kiss. Misa's eyes blew wide open, her whole body locked up, totally derailed by his sudden shift from interrogator to romantic lead. But as his hand anchored her down, taking the kiss from 0 to 100, the tension completely melted out of her. She tangled her arms around his neck, dragging herself flush against him, until she was practically hovering over his chest, matching his intense energy beat for beat. When they finally broke apart, both gasping for air, Eric broke the silence. "So was that really your only motive?" he murmured. Misa stared at the floor. "We literally have to sleep together to keep you alive," she whispered. "Did you forget? If we keep stalling, the king is gonna before she could spiral." Eric snatched her hand, shutting it down. "Not gonna happen," he stated. "The king already played that card. If he tries to pull that trigger again, he'd basically be publicly admitting he screwed up the first time." Misa just blinked, her brain rebooting as she processed his logic. Wait. If that was the case, this guy had been chilling in zero-stress mode while she was out here having absolute panic attacks. But still, even if that specific threat was off the table, the king had a million other ways to absolutely ruin him. If Eric went down, her whole life was over. He was literally the only guy in this toxic family who actually treated her like a human being. And the thought of losing him? Nah, she needed to lock this marriage down tonight. Her shaking fingers started attacking the knot of his robe, driven way more by sheer panic than actual bravery. Eric let out a soft sigh. "My lady, what is the actual rush here?" That was the breaking point. Something inside Misa completely shattered. This dude was constantly dodging, constantly throwing logic in her face. "Do I even need an excuse?" she snapped, her voice cracking with raw frustration. "Why can't you just admit it? You're totally repulsed by my body." Tears threatened to spill from her furious, shaking voice. "If I'm that disgusting to look at, just shut your eyes and get the job done." Eric stared at her like she had grown two heads. "What are you even talking about? You seriously think I wouldn't be into this?" Cutting off her reply, he grabbed the exact same ribbon she had been fighting with and popped the knot loose like it was nothing. Fast forward to the bedroom, and Misa's brain was a mess, haunted by the toxic trash talk her maids used to whisper. They used to brutally mock her scars, swearing no guy would ever willingly look at her. But Eric was totally unbothered. Hovering over her, he fully undid his robe. As the fabric dropped from his massive shoulders, it exposed a torso completely shredded by brutal ancient battle marks. "Look at me," he whispered, his shadow blanketing her. "I'm not exactly untouched myself." Misa was totally mesmerized. Tentatively reaching out, she traced a deep gash on his chest. "Who did this damage?" she murmured. Eric gave a faint, nostalgic smile, breaking down the lore behind every single scar, like a veteran swapping epic war stories. Being this close to him completely flipped her perspective. He was massively built, incredibly lethal, yet somehow giving off the softest energy ever. So he purred, dropping his voice. "Are you repulsed by my body?" Blushing hard, Misa whipped her head away. "No, I'm into it," she squeaked. Cap Eric totally teased her. "You couldn't even look at me." He dipped down his warm breath, sending chills across her collarbone. "But I'll let it slide." Misa physically shivered her lungs, forgetting how to work. A crazy rush of heat bloomed in her chest, a completely new but incredibly addictive feeling. Eric's tone hit peak gentleness. "Fair warning, this might hurt a bit if we cross the line," he murmured, giving her a final out. Caught totally off guard, Misa whipped her head around, lips parted to speak, but he instantly cut her off with another breathless kiss. The connection felt incredibly soft yet totally unyielding. Pulling back a fraction, he dropped his forehead against her shoulder, letting out a heavy, ragged sigh. "I planned on stopping," he whispered against her skin, knowing they weren't fully there yet. But then, his gaze snapped up, locking dead onto hers. "Misa, I might pull some unexpected moves." His voice dropped an octave. "Just don't shove me away. Don't reject me. Got it." Staring up at him, she hesitated before giving a tiny, slow nod. He immediately swooped back in, moving with agonizingly slow precision-making. Misa instantly second-guessed her green light. But spoiler alert, he still held back from going all the way that night, leaving Misa stranded with this crazy, burning frustration she couldn't shake. It was a total emotional roller coaster she could barely process. Cut to the next morning, Eric's intelligence squad dropped a major update on his desk. His spies had shadowed Lady Malika straight to a sketchy pawn shop, catching her slipping some mystery object into her pocket on the way out. Whatever she grabbed was way too tiny for them to actually identify. Splitting up one tail tracked her back to the royal estate, while the other staked out the storefront. Right around golden hour, a random rental carriage pulled up to the curb. An elderly lady hopped out and waltzed inside, only to get literally tossed out moments later by the furious owner screaming about some sketchy brooch she tried pawning. Tailing the old woman home, the spy snagged her exact coordinates and handed them over. Eric glared at the intel, his forehead creasing in deep thought. The location definitely rang a bell, though he couldn't pinpoint exactly why. "Interesting," he muttered under his breath. Giving his crew a quick nod, he sent them off. Back in his private quarters, he caught Jella reading some novel out loud to Misa. Spotting him, Jella jumped to her feet, biting her lip like she was fighting an internal battle. Finally, she broke the silence. Boss, are we still hitting the town today with the princess? Eric shot her a confused look, totally caught off guard by the random interrogation. Thinking about it. Why? He asked. Jella spilled the tea, explaining that one of the royal maids had been aggressively prying about their schedule earlier. Honestly, their whole vibe is super sus right now. I'm pretty sure they're plotting an ambush. A dark shadow crossed Eric's face. Makes sense. Her gut feeling lined up perfectly with his own raging paranoia. If enemies were setting a trap, he fully intended to walk right into it and wreck them. Ripping open his closet, he tossed a lethal dagger rig straight to Jella. Have Colin rig you up with this. Once we're out, hop off the ride and act completely natural. Just remember, Colin is going to be shadowing your every move. Jella blinked, looking bewildered but fiercely ready. Got it, she replied, processing the mission. I will go get the transport locked and loaded then. Throwing a quick bow, she dashed out the door. With the room clear, Eric pivoted to Misa, taking over her wardrobe prep. He carefully strapped a hidden ultralight armor vest directly beneath her fancy dress. We've got elite guards on standby, but this keeps my sanity intact, he justified. Misa's face exploded into a massive blush, desperately avoiding his intense gaze. Tell me if it's pinching anywhere, Eric murmured, expertly tweaking the buckles. It feels perfect, she whispered back before gesturing to this cute little ribbon accessory her staff had crafted. Mind tying this up for me? Eric froze, analyzing the fabric like an alien artifact. He genuinely had zero clue she was even into that kind of aesthetic. Flashing a slightly awkward but totally endearing smile, he carefully looped it around her collar. Honestly, no idea if I'm ruining this, he confessed, but I'll give it a shot. Stepping back to admire his work, he lightly squeezed her shoulder. Let us seriously pray we're just being insanely overdramatic today. For hours, the streets were dead quiet. Their royal transport cruised through the city without a single red flag popping up. Per usual, Eric started kicking himself, thinking they had geared up for absolutely zero reason. But the second they pulled up to the rendezvous point 3 hours later, Jella stumbled out looking absolutely wrecked, battered, and visibly injured. Hauling herself into the cabin while gasping for air, she shot him a deadpan look. Better believe I'm billing you major hazard pay for today. Eric's eyes locked onto her trashed outfit, his face instantly dropping into panic mode. Are you bleeding? He demanded. His voice carried major boss energy mixed with pure anxiety. Yep, absolutely am, Jella groaned out. Slapping the street grime off her jacket, she complained. Though honestly, my ego took the biggest hit, and it is 100% Sir Colin's fault. Just dropping his name made her glare with pure venom. Eric scowled, sensing the drama. Talk to me. What went down? Jella blew out a frustrated breath. She laid out the whole timeline. Walked away, did my usual market stroll, bagged up some potions, even hit up the local bookshop. Suddenly, this random dude absolutely trucks into me. I'm literally half a second from throwing hands, but the coward completely ghosts without a single apology. 10 seconds later, I check my pockets. Pickpocketed. Eric just absorbed the intel, keeping his game face locked in. Obviously, I instantly sprinted after the guy Jella ranted, throwing her hands up, but the absolute snake baited me straight into a dead-end alleyway. Boom, that's when it hit me. He was totally setting me up. A whole squad of goons was lurking in the shadows. She gritted her teeth. Actual garbage humans. Honestly, the most infuriating part is that I actually fell for such a rookie trap. She paused, her face twisting in pure disgust. I played dead for a minute and eavesdropped. They started running their mouths, and you won't believe the tea I just uncovered. This wasn't a simple mugging cap. They were trying to snatch me off the streets. Eric's gaze turned ice cold. Jella didn't miss a beat. First guy lunged, so I completely leveled him, face planted right into the dirt. Then guy number 2 tries bagging my head from the blind spot. Boom! That's when I totally snapped. She rubbed the back of her neck, looking a bit sheepish. Honestly, I probably should have played along to see who pulled the strings. But my blood was absolutely boiling. Rational thinking went out the window. Eric let out a heavy breath. Makes sense. Here's the weird flex, though. Jella leaned in. They had the numbers, but they didn't jump me all at once. It was a total one-on-one gauntlet. I was scratching my head until I caught sight of the mastermind lurking in the back. She inhaled sharply. It was literally Sir Cullen. He was feeding them to me single file, treating the whole ambush like his own sick little boot camp. Dude kept whispering numbers with every goon he launched. So naturally, my ego spiked. I thought he was scoring my combat. Eric pinched the bridge of his nose. He wasn't grading you. He was totally benchmarking your moves against his little brothers back in the day, he deduced instantly. Exactly, Jella threw her hands up. And the absolute nerve of this guy to actually lecture me about it right after the brawl. Like the second the last dude dropped, he straight up asks me why even pack steel if you're just gonna muscle through them barehanded. Guess how I responded? I demonstrated exactly what that blade was for, by squeezing the truth out of those punks myself. Eric's mouth clamped shut. He moved to cut her off, low-key panicking that this gritty recap would traumatize Misa. But one look at her left him paralyzed. Misa had both hands over her face, shaking violently not from terror, but from desperately trying to hold back a fit of giggles. Utterly baffled, Eric whipped his attention back to his knight. Yo, Captain Jella called out, catching him zoning out. Right, keep going, Eric coughed out, masking his confusion. Jella just gave a casual wave. Long story short, a tiny bit of aggressive negotiation got them singing. They were contracted by the underground rogue syndicate. The vibe shifted her, tone dropping an octave. Their orders were hyper-specific. Grab me, lock me away for months, and finally dump me back at the Claudine mansion, carrying some random guy's kid. Eric's teeth locked together. He already knew exactly whose fingerprints were on this garbage. Jella folded her arms tight, locking down her emotions. Better believe I'm expecting a massive hazard pay bonus for this mess, she grumbled. Eric released a long breath. Word on the street is, you've been hoarding coin for a forge back home, he stated smoothly. Consider it handled out of my personal vault. Give me a couple of weeks and that property deed is officially yours by next month. Jella's jaw practically hit the floor. Wait, seriously, she gasped. Eric gave a single firm nod. Good looks, Cap, she blurted out. Checking out her shredded outfit and chaotic bedhead, she sighed. Since I look like a total disaster class, I'll just tag along with Sir Cullen. Throwing a quick salute, she bailed from the carriage, plunging Eric and Misa into this insanely heavy silence. A shadow crossed Eric's face as his muscles tensed. These rats are playing zero rules, he hissed to himself. The goal was to spark some toxic scandal about Jella and me. Misa tilted her chin up, her voice completely unfazed. Funny you mentioned that. There was already chatter painting her as your secret side piece. Eric let out a painfully slow exhale. Figured they'd pull something like that? He groaned, shaking it off. His expression melted into something way softer as he locked eyes with her. Moving on. Are you actually okay, my lady? He murmured gently. Misa just stared blankly. Regarding what? That whole graphic breakdown Jella just gave, he clarified, visibly thrown off. I was dead sure that would have triggered you. Oh, the gore, she casually shrugged. Maybe little kid me would have freaked out, but honestly, seeing red is just another Tuesday now. Eric's brow dipped into a hard V. You're genuinely that desensitized to it, he questioned softly, his voice an absolute void. To be real, Misa started her gaze drifting into nowhere. I basically trained myself to cackle like a total psycho. There were nights I literally had to snooze next to corpses. Survival mode as a kid meant faking insanity, and I had to sell the performance. Eric went completely mute, his eyes burning into hers. She just kept spitting facts like it was nothing. But like 2 years back, the maids started getting paranoid that I was snapping back to reality. Problem was, my entire circle was already wiped out, so my supply of dead bodies ran completely dry. Her voice dropped to a hush. So I had to constantly invent new unhinged behavior just to keep the crazy girl illusion alive. Time totally froze as Eric just stared. It felt like an anvil had dropped right onto his chest. His brain couldn't even process the absolute nightmare fuel she'd been living through since day one. The pure isolation, the raw panic masked behind a fake Joker smile. You're still carrying things that terrify you right now, aren't you? He probed gently. Misa's eyes darted his way. I'm blocking out my childhood, she whispered defensively. And that topic is strictly off limits. Out of nowhere, she leaned in her fingertips, ghosting across his jawline. Care to explain why you're suddenly digging so deep? Eric stayed completely statuesque. Because I'm trying to figure out the real you, he fired back smoothly. Misa tilted her head, giving zero emotions away. We'll see about that, she purred slowly. We're talking top-tier classified intel here. And dropping a lore bomb this massive? Yeah, it demands a seriously hefty payout in return. Flashback to her kid era, Misa realized those were straight up her golden years. Misa, what did I just say about hoarding sweets? Her mom would playfully fuss. Tiny Misa whipped around, throwing a massive pout while death gripping a stash of forbidden sugar. The maids hanging nearby just giggled and one swooped in, snatching the little girl up to play bodyguard against her mom's fake rage. Life tucked away inside the tiny Celia palace was pure unbothered bliss. It wasn't some crazy flex of royal luxury, but the vibes were absolutely immaculate. Everyone just showered her with pure love. Don't even try hiding, Misa, her mom teased. Did you forget what happens to little troublemakers who ignore their moms when it's pouring out? Lunging forward to trap her in a sudden hug, her mom gasped dramatically. The goddess swoops down from the sky and snatches them right up. Her mom's bright ringing laughter would echo through the courtyard, locking in those beautiful core memories forever.